Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this General Policy Committee meeting for the 22nd of January of 2026. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we have the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed and distributed. I see no lights. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to the approval of minutes from December 11th, 2025 General Policy Committee meeting with the recommendation the General Policy Committee approve the minutes from December 11th.
I move approval of the minutes from the December 11th, 2025 General Policy Committee meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as printed and distributed. Any public comment?
We have no comment.
I see no further lights. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioners Engel, Walker, and Willetts absent.
All right.
Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to our discussion items for the afternoon. We have 2025-976 City Auditor First Quarterly Report. With the recommendation, the General Policy Committee accepts the City Auditor's quarterly report as approved and recommended by the Audit Committee.
Very good. Welcome, Mr. Auditor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the General Policy Committee. My name is Stephen Mary, City Auditor. I'm presenting this report to you. This is a report for the City Auditor Quarterly Update for the first quarter of FY26. We have a policy in the office to communicate our activities to members of the Audit Committee and to the City Commission, and this is a summary of what we presented in our December meeting. What we do is we report on the things that we do. These are audits, these are post-audits, post-audit reviews, investigations, and so on. In our first quarter, we completed and reported to the Audit Committee the Asset Management Processes Audit. This was an audit to look at asset management, internal controls, procedures, to evaluate whether the physical inventory of these assets was correct. This audit is not yet on the City Auditor's website, but it will be because it's completed. We reported also in that meeting that we had 2 audits in progress. One of them is the Facilities Management Administration Audit. The other one is the PCI audit. The Facilities Management's objective is to look at the internal controls, to just take a look at facilities to make sure that they are safe, that maintenance activities are occurring when they should. And the PCI process audit is to look to see that our credit card purchases are compliant with what is called the PCI DSS standard. PCI DSS means Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. It's a standard that merchants, anybody who uses credit cards must adhere to. And this is basically, it is an IT audit, and that's the objective of it. In the office, we also do follow-up audits or post-audit reviews. We are required by our standards to make sure that when we make recommendations, we come back to see that corrective action has been taken on those recommendations. The graph that you see on the board now is showing you audit recommendations that have been closed, in other words, that have been fully implemented. We have 12 of those. It's also showing you audit recommendations that have been partially implemented, and we have 2 of those. And also audit recommendations that are still open. We have 5. And that 5 is basically showing us the number. Those are the audit recommendations whose implementation date has not yet been reached. That's why we have 5. But the important number that I would like to highlight is on the past due. We have a zero past due, which is to say that management has implemented all the recommendations by the date that they said they would. So that is a very good statistic. We have here just generally a summary of those fully implemented or partially implemented audit recommendations. They are in fire rescue, housing and community development, Gainesville Police Department, risk management, OEI, another one from Gainesville Fire Rescue. That was just a summary to tell you generally in which departments those audit recommendations are. Another thing that we do in the office is to do fraud hotlines. We run a fraud hotline in conjunction with a private vendor, which allows anybody, it might be city builders, it might be city neighbors who think they have observed fraud that needs to be reported. That fraud hotline allows them to make those reports anonymously. If they choose to, they can choose to say who they are, but more importantly, they can be anonymous, which is to say their names will not be divulged. That a vendor will get those the information about the fraud tips. They put it in a system. We go into that system, we look at it, and we do our investigations and make any recommendations that is appropriate. I have here a summary of what the picture looked like when we had this, our last audit committee meeting. We had received in that period 3 new cases. We had 4 open investigations and had closed 3 investigations in that particular period. This page here is simply saying to us that we do have an external audit that is going on, being carried out by Purvis Gray, and I believe that that presentation is going to be in March this year. That was a quick summary, but what you have here is these are dates of the the audit committee meetings that we have this year. We have at least one audit committee meeting every quarter, and those are the days that we have. Again, this is where we present our activities and other things to the audit committee, but this is not the only time that we communicate what we do. We do communicate to each and every commissioner what we are doing on a one-on-one basis. I've also taken an opportunity to advertise our fraud hotline. What we have here is the hotline number and also the website URL where people can go and make their reports of fraud, waste, and abuse. But I also have the numbers for OEI, where people can report other issues to do with harassment, as well as a number for human resources where people can go and report on employee relations issues. That was my quick recap. If you have any questions.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, thank you. Very, very ambitious program that you have underway. Thank you so much. Have you reported to us since your peer review?
Our peer review happened exactly the week that we had our audit committee meeting. In fact, our peer reviewers were here to witness the audit committee meeting as it progressed, but we have since received a report from the peer reviewers to say that we in fact passed our peer review with flying colors. So that will be the subject of some of our reporting in the next audit committee meeting.
Okay.
As yet, we do not have the certificate of compliance, but it's coming.
Very good. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. I don't see any other lights. So, Madam Clerk, Commissioner Book. Yeah.
Yeah, also, ditto, thank you, Mr. Auditor. I was just wondering, how does your office, when we have an external audit, like you're talking to Purvis Gray, that one has been critical for us. It's been very, very good outcomes the last couple of years. How does your office kind of coordinate with them?
First of all, we help the City Commission, first of all, to pick that external auditor. But when they go about doing their audit work, they coordinate with us in the areas where they are going to audit. We are very much interested in what they do, because what they do will help us in our planning as well. We do not want to audit what they have looked at. So they give us the areas that they will be looking at, they give us the objectives that they are after, and we track what they do. From time to time, they tell us what they are doing. That is the coordination that we have. Otherwise, we do not at all tell them what to do or how to do anything. They just do what they do, and they give us any feedback that they may have.
I know you have at least one staff member. Can you just mention your staff members that you have? You have a small office, but you've laid out a strategic plan. You have a sequence of audits that you need to do on a periodic basis based on risk and mitigation, and then you have ones that when you meet with us or you hear from the community, you put those into a plan, and I think that's very helpful from your office. But that might be also good that you just mention your staff members and/or have them introduce themselves so we can say thank you to them.
Indeed, thank you very much. My office is 5 people strong at this time. It's me, the city auditor, and we have an assistant city auditor, Diana, who is in here with us today. We also have an IT audit manager. Her name is Lisa Sedzek. She is not in this meeting. We also have a staff auditor. His name is Peter Demaris. We also have an audit coordinator. Her name is Mickey Betty. This is the staff that I have. We do have a position that is frozen at this time. If we had that position, that would be 6, but it is frozen. But the staff that I have is 5, including myself.
I think, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, that the audit office has been really working at a high level of efficiency in their staff, and our audit reports are a reflection of that efficiency. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Seeing no other lights, so Madam Clerk, do we have public comment on this?
Have public comment.
Is that one for this item, or?
So I think there may be, it's for a general public comment that we do not have for general policy committee, so there may be a confusion.
Yeah, there is no general public comment on general policy committee day. It's not part of our agenda. Those are for regular meetings. So nothing for this item then?
That's correct.
Okay.
It is
It
for
is for
this
this
item?
Okay. Come on up. No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. Ad hoc. I'm Johnny Law. I heard some of what he was auditing and stuff like that. Yeah, I believe it's not enough information given to the council to really truly know what's going on throughout the city and stuff like that. Yeah. And what I was gonna do was just give a briefing of what was already said so that people would know what's still going on so that it's fresh in people's minds and stuff. Yeah. So, I'm gonna read this real quick. True Law Breed Theme. Blue Star, Blue Notice, Blue Campaign. Blue Star, Federal Whistleblowers, Secret Service, IRS. Legal Department will continue to head as it's their jurisdiction per jurisprudence. Blue Notice, all armies, excluding Renaissance, medieval state religion, will continue to bring state religion war games to an cease and desist. An end, Omega. They will be disarmed, weapons stolen from NATO, and war museums will be repossessed, seized, respecting the Constitution, right to bear arms. The rest need to know basis. America's armies, DOD, Space Force, Rescue are working with every country, nation, and kingdom, ensuring safe rescue from state, religion, genocide hands, safety first. Blue Campaign is ongoing all over the globe. All jurors, headed by International Homeland Security, ICE, and all law enforcement agencies. The rest need to know basis, Freedom Commission, Freedom Platform, free entry, free exit. Blue Campaign, let's end human trafficking now. Sovereign Worldwide Global American Kingdom, United Nations, Global Government, American NATO, Government Watchdog, Worldwide Forces, YS. Johnny Lowe. Oh yeah. Auditor. When you auditing,
So, Mr. Law, Mr. Law, everything has to come up through here. All right. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
That was our last speaker, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anyone else? Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the report? Yep. Commissioner Willetts.
I move the City Commission accept the City Auditor's quarterly report as approved and recommended by the Audit Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I see no further lights. Is there any comment on this one? Yeah.
We've already done it.
Sorry. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioners Engel and Dr. Walker absent.
Thank you,
Madam
Mr.
Clerk.
Mayor. We're on to 2026-59 Mobility Plan Update and Fee Schedule. With the recommendation, the General Policy Committee provides specific recommendations to staff concerning proposed transportation projects, fees, phasing schedule, and exemption from fees.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the companion piece to the comprehensive plan amendments that the commission considered and approved for transmittal to the state. We will also talk about that because we have recently received a letter from the Commerce Department regarding the city's transmittal. But this is all the kind of nuts and bolts that I think all wanted to get into. So let's get into it.
Okay. Well,
Sure. Good afternoon. Scott Wright with Transportation. And just a quick rehash of where we are in this process being our overall effort to update our existing TMPA system and replace that with a mobility program. So we started this back in late 2023. We put a lot of effort into merging sort of all of our existing transportation plans and ideas together into one overarching transportation plan, and came up with some new ideas to fill in some gaps in the system along the way. We did a period of public outreach where we held a workshop actually here in this room, and then participated in a few other public meetings around the city throughout that time. And then in June, the CPA and the Land Development Code text amendment both went to the City Plan Board. City Plan Board approved the CPA, but wanted more information at that time on the text amendment to the Land Development Code. So we came back with some more details, particularly on the fee schedule, and presented that to the City Plan Board. They then approved that in September and had some recommendations, specific recommendations that we're going to go over here today as well, just four of those. And then lastly, the City Commission heard the CPA just before the holidays on December 4th, and you all approved the CPA to proceed to the state for review. Mr. Persons already mentioned what's happened there. At this point, we're proceeding onward until we can get more information on that and continue to solve that issue. But anyway, today is just an additional chance to give us some more feedback on some of the details of the plan, the projects, the fee schedule. And then the next step, of course, would be to go back to a public hearing for the Land Development Code amendment. So that's where we are. A couple things to remember. The mobility fee that we're talking about today applies only to new development projects in the city. It doesn't apply to individual single-family homes. There are different thresholds of types of development where this fee does not apply. So that's something that we'll kind of go over in a little more detail as well. And then lastly, the projects that are proposed in the plan are pretty high level. We don't have a lot of the details related to those projects. Now, we did just enough work to get a planning level cost estimate is what it's called. So the best cost estimate we can get based on whatever type of facility it is and the length of that facility, essentially. So we're not going to move forward with the details on any of those projects until some point in the future when we collect the funds and we come back to you all to work out the details and design and funding and everything else. So all that said, Mr. Jonathan Paul is here again to provide a presentation, and then we'll be here to answer any questions. Thanks.
very good. Welcome, Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Scott, for the introduction. Thank you, City Commission, for hearing this presentation today. Scott gave a very good overview of where we're at, and we're going to talk about a lot of different issues. This is sort of an open discussion format. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. This is really the opportunity to get some feedback. We've had certain discussions at various points related to the fee, the projects, and met with you individually, but we've never had an opportunity to meet with you all together as a group formally to get some of the feedback. There are some important policy level decisions that we want you to be aware of as we go forward with this process. And ultimately, our goal is to make sure you and the community itself is comfortable with the mobility plan and the mobility fee moving forward. So with that said, we have transmitted the text amendment to the state of Florida. We have prepared a draft mobility fee schedule, a technical report to detail how that schedule was developed, a comparison table with the county and some of the existing fees that are charged by the city, as well as some proposed phasing of those fee increases. As Scott had mentioned before, this process has been going on for a little over 2 years now. We've had a number of public outreach opportunities. We've had our plan itself up on the city's website for over a year now. We've taken continuous feedback on those list of projects and improvements identified on that plan. The plan itself is composed of several parts. There's a streets plan that's largely focused on future widenings and also reconstruction of roadways to add multimodal improvements such as sidewalks and protected bicycle lanes. There's a multimodal plan focused on trails and adding in shared use pathways, an intersection plan that looks at both vehicular and multimodal travel, a sidewalk plan, and then an overall, the transit plan itself, we've largely deferred to the city's adopted transit development plan. And then there are several initiatives to implement these ongoing plans and policies. As I mentioned earlier, all this information that we have presenting today is available on the city's website. All of these plans are available on the city's website. You can actually go online and click on each individual link to get more detail of what's being proposed in terms of either a sidewalk, a roadway, or a bicycle lane. And this is sort of the overall streets plan, which provides really a mixture of roadway improvements. Most of those are sort of on the periphery of the county, and those are largely state roads or county roads that would be coordinated with those municipalities or those entities. They would primarily be responsible for those. The mobility fee itself includes 10% of the cost of those projects as a share or a match to go towards them. But the vast majority of those projects, such as a 34th Street to the north or 53rd Street from the airport, will be funded either by the state of Florida or by Alachua County. The city could make contributions toward those to, say, get decorative sidewalk or decorative lighting, sidewalks, some enhancements or multimodal pathways along those. But those are primarily funded by the state and county. Mostly within the city, it's largely looking at opportunities to add in bicycle lanes, to add in sidewalks, and to improve access for people walking, bicycling, and accessing transit service. And then on the western portion of the city where there could be some future annexation, the county has identified several potential future corridors out there. This plan reflects those corridors identified in the county's plan, so there's coordination, whether those properties ultimately annex into the city of Gainesville or they stay within the county. There's an opportunity to build those projects and make sure those roadways get built in conjunction with new development. And that's something the city and the county have been working on and coordinating for a number of years now and have done a pretty decent job, especially in the annexed areas. We also have a multimodal plan that largely looks at new trail connections, and then largely along the state road and county road system, opportunities to take existing 5-foot sidewalks and convert those into 8-foot wide trails or shared use pathways. Again, the city's fee includes a portion of that cost, but the vast majority of it would be funded by the state and the county. Many of these on the county system are already reflected on theirs. The state road system is something that FDOT would look at on a case-by-case basis. Then the city itself also has a multimodal plan looking at opportunities for bicycle Sharo connections, for bicycle boulevards, and potentially a few bicycle major corridors, which would actually have protected or separated bicycle lanes. One thing on this map, it's sort of a static viewpoint, but if you go onto the online map, there is a link that you can connect the existing network. So while these look to be in isolation, when you actually click on the existing roadway and the existing multimodal network, Gainesville's got an extensive network already. So a lot of these little pieces start to make sense because they help to finish up the gaps in a much larger multimodal system. So I'd say the city, in terms of multimodal, especially bicycle planning, is far ahead of most municipalities. And really what we're talking here is closing the gaps between those systems. We've also looked at intersection plans. These would be mid-block crossings, new traffic signals, potential roundabouts, and even the retrofit of some of the older bicycle lanes at roundabouts. The new modern design provides a way for a bicyclist to come off of the roadway and go into the roundabout where they share the sidewalk with pedestrians. Older designs had the bicycle basically take the roundabouts itself, so the bicycles had to go in the roundabout. There was no way for them to actually get up onto the sidewalk. So we've identified a number of those. The vast majority of them are long portions of the Depot Avenue corridor, which was one of the first ones built. But these really look at a broad range of multimodal improvements. And again, these are on state roads, city roads, and county roads. These have been coordinated with the state's TIP and also coordinated with the county's mobility plan. And then the city has an inventory of sidewalks, and these are sort of, I'd say, probably the priority sidewalks over the next 10 years. There's an additional list in the plan that goes the next 10 years beyond that, but these will be the priority gaps, and largely these are residential streets where residents have actually made a request to the city's Public Works Department and asked for a sidewalk along here. So this mobility fee would actually help to fund or close some of those gaps in the residential sidewalk network as well. So that's sort of the general overall plan. As Scott had mentioned earlier, your Public Works Department will be taking each one of these projects. They will identify potential funding opportunities available to them, which ones are either part of a resurfacing or an ongoing project. And each one of these will be designed and detailed in a much more comprehensive manner. They'll look at the right-of-way, evaluate utilities, and ultimately come up with a final recommendation. But essentially, we've identified there's a need on that particular facility for either a multimodal improvement or a roadway. And really, your Public Works Department will take that to the next step and also have public outreach as part of that process. So the city today has had a mitigation system in place. Scott mentioned earlier, a mobility fee is not a tax. It's not an assessment on existing homeowners or existing businesses. It's if you are coming into the city and you're building a new development, a new residential development, a new grocery store, or a new bank, you would largely pay a mobility fee. There are offsets for if you're redoing an existing building. And then there's also some other policy decisions that we'd like to talk to you about, specific locations of the city. So the city system's been in place for over 20 years now. It is based on trip generation of each individual land use. The fees are determined on a case-by-case basis. And it requires also additional mitigation per zone. So development today is already paying something to the city. They're not coming in and getting a free ride. They are making a contribution either through improvements that they're doing or through a monetary contribution. This sort of takes it to the next level where it's based on the mobility plan itself. A lot of these projects that were in the comprehensive plan have sort of already been done. And this is sort of the next evolution of this process. So again, as I mentioned, some of the exemptions are for changes of uses that don't generate additional impact. We are proposing that if they're doing a single-family lot or duplex on an existing lot of record, not a platted subdivision or a new development, but on a single lot, Right now, you do not require them to pay or to mitigate, and so we're proposing to keep that in place as well. So somebody is doing an infill lot or an accessory dwelling unit in downtown Gainesville, they wouldn't be paying this fee. If they're doing as part of a 20-unit subdivision, they would be paying that, and that's how the process works today as well. Originally, the city started off with 2 zones back in 2002, A and B, and at that time, the A zone was exempt, and the fee was only assessed within the B zone. In 2005, it added the C to largely capture the southwest area in and around Butler Plaza. And then over the years, in 2009, there were several more zones added, a Zone M, a Zone D, out to the west of I-75, and a Zone E up on the northern portion of the city. So today, the area in Zone A, which includes largely the University of Florida, downtown Gainesville, and the east side of the city, they do not pay a fee today. So one of the policy discussions that we're going to have is we've identified needs in that zone. We have broken the east side of the town and downtown into 2 separate ones under this scenario. We are proposing fees in there, but as a policy level decision, you may want to say, we're not necessarily ready for a fee in the east portion of the town or in the downtown area. That's really a policy level decision that we'll get into here shortly. And then these are the current zones as they stand today. One of the big differences is the projects and the fee itself that the city calculates its mitigation on is from cost of 2009 and projects in 2009. And as you've seen, throughout the city and throughout the country and Florida, construction costs have gone up dramatically. So the mobility plan itself reflects current day construction cost. The fee that you're having today does not necessarily capture that in terms of those overall costs. And so as part of this process, we've developed land development code amendments. Most of the language regarding your system today is in your comprehensive plan. So that was, in 2002, there was no guidance at a state level for how you do an alternative system. So the city of Gainesville did its own system, Alachua County did its own system, and they sort of guided the rest of the state in terms of how to do this. Subsequent to that, there are a number of jurisdictions throughout Florida now that have adopted mobility plans and mobility fees, and most of that language is in their land development code itself, not necessarily in the comprehensive plan. So we've proposed to remove a lot of that language and to include the process in a more formalized process in the land development code itself. And these are just the overall steps that we've taken. We're going through steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 now, which are a comprehensive plan amendment, mobility plan, mobility fee, and then actually developing the implementing ordinances and the land development regulations. So this is a process that we go through. We've done roughly 75 of these throughout the state of Florida. We're working on over the past year. We've done 15 all the way from the Panhandle down to Miami, Sarasota, and Central Florida. This is a process that we've used throughout the state that's been well received. It has not been challenged, and it has held up to the test of time. And this is a process that we've used in Gainesville as well. And we'll go into a little bit more detail. It just shows you what the end result of all that overall process is. But we'll go into each one of the categories and the fees themselves. So probably the biggest policy level decision from a technical standpoint, any new development generates traffic. We've already identified that there's a need for improvements throughout the whole city. Now the east side doesn't have as many big roadway projects or as high dollar cost projects, but there are a need for sidewalks, there are a need for bicycle lanes, there are a need for transit improvements. Today, your current system within the downtown area, around the University of Florida and the entire east side, they're only required to address on-site issues such as an easement for a transit stop, some dedicated right-of-way for a wider sidewalk, potential improvements at an adjacent intersection. They're not required to actually make any type of monetary payments to the city to mitigate their traffic. So a lot of the development and redevelopment you've seen around the University of Florida over the past 10 years, a lot of development you've seen in downtown Gainesville, they have not been paying a fee to date. Part of this process is we've calculated what the fee would be for the east side, for the downtown, for the northwest and the east, because there is a need, because there are projects there. But you as a policy-making board could say, because we want to continue to promote development in the east portion of Gainesville, we want to continue that practice of not implementing a fee for that new development. That is a policy level decision that you all could make to direct us on. And that would be a big difference from where we are today. Right now, today, downtown and the east side does not pay a fee. Under this scenario, just a pure calculation, they would pay it unless you all elect to exempt them. There is also a transit fee that is paid by just multifamily development in the UF context area. We have now incorporated your transit development plan into the mobility fee. So roughly 25% of the overall cost is transit, and that would be paid by everybody in the city or whoever pays the mobility fee itself. A share of that funds would go towards transit. Right now, it's only towards multifamily that makes that fee payment. We've integrated transit into the overall plan as part of this. Sorry. Statute allows you as a elected body to exempt affordable housing from any type of fee. You have criteria that's already been established for affordable housing programs. So if you elect to do so, the ordinance could reflect that there will be an exemption for affordable housing as part of the mobility fee. That, again, is a policy level decision. Florida statute permits it. You all can make that decision of whether you want to exempt it, partial exemption, or full exemption. But again, that is a policy level decision. And then we have proposed to maintain what essentially is known as de minimis threshold. Today, the current system does not charge a downtown infill lot or an accessory dwelling unit for a fee. That they're not part of the overall development plan review process. If you're doing a change of use and you're not generating additional traffic, or you're generating additional, relatively minor impacts, and you don't require a site plan, you don't pay a fee. Or if you generate less than 10 trips, you don't pay a fee. Those are the policies that are in place today, and we're recommending maintaining those. Now, if you say we're going to Newberry, Alachua, unincorporated county, they charge a fee regardless. So if you're a single-family home anywhere in the county, Newberry, Alachua, you pay a fee, whether you're part of a big subdivision or you're on an individual lot. We're proposing not to do that because the city is trying to promote infill and redevelopment and also accessory dwelling units. But again, that is a policy level decision. This would only apply to developments that come in and have to submit a development plan to the city, which is how the process works today as well. We did have a calculation for our electric vehicles that was the same as motor vehicles. And at the time, the CPP board had recommended that we charge it at 25% because there wasn't a whole lot of data on electric vehicles. Since that time, we've had several other local governments request that. So we've actually gone out there and collected real-time data on usage, time of usage, how long it takes to charge them, how many vehicles are actually going there. So one of the recommendations was 25% of the calculated rate. We now have data that comes out to about 50% of the rate. So there's not as many vehicles charging, but they are staying for a longer time, and they are also going to those chargers specifically to charge their vehicle, whereas a gas station, a lot of the people are going from a bank to a restaurant to the interstate system, and they're stopping for gas on the way. Because of the nature of EV chargers, they're going to the EV charger specifically to charge it, and then if there's an ancillary use next to it, they go to that. Now, that's only for places that charge a customer for it. You know, if Publix provides it for their customers, or an apartment complex provides it for their residents, or the city provides it as a service, those aren't charged. It's just if it's a commercial enterprise. I think probably the best example is the array that you have out in Butler Plaza today. You know, those are primarily ones that somebody has to pay to go charge the vehicles to, and they specifically go there to charge that, and then likely they go to some of the other uses that are out there. So we didn't have data on it. We do have data now, but it still is a recommendation from your planning board, and it's something we could consider to have a lower rate as well as a matter of policy. You know, as a city trying to either promote electric vehicles or not. And then the final recommendation from the plan board was as development comes in, the way we have our ordinance written, any request for credit has to get approved by the city commission. There are some instances where developers are building a wider sidewalk or adding a transit pad, something, you know, upwards of $100,000 that maybe, you know, could end up taking 2 or 3 months to actually get on the agenda item and get a credit for. Staff could potentially, you know, reach an agreement with development, which is sort of how it's done today, to say, you know, hey, if you build this for us, it's above and beyond your site, we can give you some credit for it. The planning board recommended to allow that process up to $100,000. Anything beyond that would have to come to the city commission for approval. So if somebody said, hey, I'm gonna go build a half-mile sidewalk for you at $500,000, I'm responsible for $100,000 of it. I want credit for the $400,000, and you know, I'll build it, I'll front it to you, but I want to be able to get credit for that. That would have to come to you all for approval. Something to say, we're dedicating some additional right-of-way for a transit stop or for a corner clip for an intersection improvement, and it's less than $100,000, that's something that could be made at the staff level. That, again, is a policy-level decision. And with that, we are proposing 4 assessment areas right now. There are currently 6 areas, and again, the A area largely includes the UF downtown and the east portion of Gainesville. Under this scenario, we've broken that down into what we're calling the central zone. Then we have an eastern zone, which includes a little bit more of the northern portion of the city over to 6th Street. Then there's the northwest and then the southwest. And then what we've done is there's basically an expansion area. So if areas annex into the city, right now you've had to create a whole new zone for it. Here we've kind of said this is the urban agreement boundary we have with the county. If you annex, this is what zone you're going to be in. So there wouldn't be a need to create a new zone in the future. They would automatically be within that zone as part of the annexation. So that process would help make that a little bit smoother going on. And we have calculated the fee for each one of these areas. You know, and the policy level discussion is basically what we're calling the east area and the central area today. Those are largely zone A. They don't pay a fee today. Under this scenario, if you all elect to say, go forward with your calculations, they would pay a fee unless they're actually exempted. And so this just sort of shows you the existing zones laid over what we're proposing today. So largely zone A, you see it goes a little bit, I believe it goes up to 16th now in the central district and then over to 6th. So it's, for the most part, it's pretty close to what zone A is today, with a little bit more of an extension. So zone A has one fee, zone B has a second, or I'm sorry, the east has a separate fee, the central has a separate fee, the northwest and the southwest. And to give you a better idea of what that means in reality is that's what it means. So if you were coming in for a subdivision and say you had 10 units and you're in the east area, your fee would be $15,000 or $1,534 per dwelling unit. If you were going in the southwest area, which is largely the areas out by Archer Road and past the interstate, and you came in for a subdivision, you'd be paying $44,000. You're not going to get a whole lot of single family in the central area, but we still calculated the fee for it anyways. If you came in for the subdivision, it'd be $1,822 per unit or $18,000. And in the northwest, where you're more likely to see some more single family developments, it'd be $3,700 per dwelling unit, or for 10 units, it'd be $37,000.
We'll pause you for just a moment. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you're going to kind of walk through some of these, but just give me a sense of why it is so much more expensive in the Southwest. Is it because the potential roads would be new roads versus just improvements to existing roads? And this is tied to a separate, larger question of, because this only applies to new development, is anything in the formula set to make sure that we are not, that new people, new human beings, new residents are not paying for deferred maintenance that should have been paid for past and current residents? I'm just trying to understand that because, you know, in no way do I want it to be that, you know, the 18-year-old who wants to move out of their house and go live somewhere and needs, in essence, one net new unit of housing, you know, for them to live in. They have to, in essence, pay for the sins of decades of residents who truly never paid enough to maintain the roads.
So this only includes the projects in the mobility plan. It's not going back and looking at for resurfacing of existing roads or roads that weren't built or widened at the time. The projects in the mobility plan are the basis for the fee. And the reason why you have the difference between the northwest, southwest, and the east and central are twofold. One are the types of projects that are needed. So largely in the east, you're talking primarily multimodal, sidewalks, bicycle lanes, transit. Southwest, you're talking more the future roadways, turn lane improvements, some bigger dollar projects, but you're also talking larger trip lengths as well. So we assess for 3 miles in the central, in the east, and 5 miles for the northwest and the southwest.
And
so
the trip, what's it called? Trip
length.
No, the trip, the calculation, the trip generation. Is that based on a model that is generic across the country, across Florida, or does it take into account our own context of if we have 6 million RTS route trips a year, that is perhaps different than some communities?
We are largely using the IT trip generation rates, which is what the city's using today. So we're using the same set of data that is based on national level data and trips, but it is fairly well accepted, and that's what the city's using today. You're correct on transit, except that transit's a component of the overall fee. So the trip calculation itself includes a transit component, walking, bicycle component, and a vehicle driving component. Okay. So, they're all sort of captured in and amongst themselves. But largely, the difference, I would say the trip length's the biggest factor, and then the cost of the underlying projects themselves as well. So those are the two biggest factors of why you have any difference in fees between the four of these.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Commissioner Chestnut.
I think mine is on the mobility fee, but I'm looking now to see how much more you're going to present. And then maybe I'll save my questions at the end.
The vast majority of what we're going to go through now is just sort of the schedule itself to show you how individual uses are calculated. But once we're done that, we're done the presentation.
Yeah, then I'll come back. I have questions then.
Okay. So just to give you a feel,
Hold on, one more,
Yes, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Book. Yeah.
Yes, since, Mr. Mayor, since you were about to move forward on,
Yeah.
on the fees, I just want to, just one question that's appropriate now is, so one of the policy decisions that you're talking about earlier would actually take out this single-family residential and leave that as exempt from these if we were to make that policy decision.
well, the way it's done today, so if you have an individual lot, you don't have to go submit a site plan for that. You can just come in for a building permit and show a survey. You don't pay a fee today. If you're doing a subdivision, I think it's probably a minimum of 6 units and above, or 10 or 100 units, and you have to submit what's known as a development plan with engineering, stormwater, streetlight, parking. If you have to submit a development plan, the single family pays as part of that development plan. But if you're coming for an individual lot, today you don't pay. You only pay if you submit a development plan. So we are proposing that. So that single family development would still stay, but it only applies to subdivisions.
Thank you.
And then when I had mentioned earlier the exemption, as a matter of technical perspective, I can't tell you that the east side has no impact. As a matter of policy, you can say there's overriding public interest in exempting the east side from this. So, you know, just like you do today, you exempt the east side of the city from the fee calculation. You can do that as well. You could exempt the central if you wanted to as well. It's just, that's a policy decision as opposed to just a purely technical.
Commissioner
Well,
Chastain.
that's exactly where I want to go. Most of the new development in the east side is for, workforce housing and affordable housing. And so instead of trying to put a pall or squelch that development, I would, from a policy level, I think we would want to exempt the east side because we want to encourage development there as much as possible. And so when we come to the end of this, that's what I'm going to be recommending, that we take that as a policy. And then if you could also talk about this, has your firm provided a mobility fee schedule or recommendation to any other university town? Have you done this for Tallahassee or?
We've done in Florida State. Right now, we're trying to remember the other.
have you
We're
done
working
Tampa or-
around Oviedo, which is near the University of Central Florida. We've done one for Tampa, which is around the University of South Florida. Sarasota County, which includes USF, South Florida. Doing downtown West Palm Beach right now. So we've done Miami Beach, and we've done Bunnell. You know, there's a wide variety of fees that we've taken into account for both university towns and beach communities as well as other communities.
Well, I would like to hear about your experience in getting, getting those fees implemented in a university town,
Okay.
perhaps at the end. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in real quick, and I think Alachua County.
Yeah, Alachua County, yeah. I mean, well,
That's
you
where
were.
you started.
Yeah, that's where I started in Alachua, and then last 2 years ago, we updated Alachua County's mobility plan and mobility fee. And so, yeah, in St. Augustine, we've done a number of ones throughout the city. So, you know, Gainesville has unique circumstances. That's why, you know, in terms of when we calculated this, we wanted to recognize that the downtown core and the east side do have a shorter overall trip length. But again, in terms of a matter of policy, you know, that's a decision that you all can make in terms of exempting them outright. You know, because again, the fee is just one component of this. There are a lot of other factors to consider when you know, implementing any kind of program like such as this.
Well, just one other thing. So, on sidewalks, if we wanted to go back and retrofit some communities with sidewalks, but you're not building anything else, but just bringing the sidewalks on, would that entail, would have to put a fee there?
You would not have to put a fee there. You can spend the mobility fee money on those mobility fee projects. The east side, that's something we'd have to talk about though, in terms of, if you're charging other development, you can't really fund a project if you're not charging them, you can't use that money to fund it. You've got to spend it where you're collecting it. So, if you're collecting it in the central district, you got to spend it in the central. There are times where they go across borders or there's a reason why it extends somewhere, but if you're not going to assess them, you can't also give them the benefit from somewhere else
I see.
to
Well,
pay for
I
that.
am more concerned with the fee for
Just not assessing
a single family and detached and attached developments, new development.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to emphasize, I think, what Jonathan was talking about, and that's ultimately why it's a policy decision for you all, because where there's both great need in terms of investment, but obviously, that's that balance between encouraging development, incentivizing development. That's why you have Zone A, as currently exists with the exemption. But ultimately, it's commission decision about that. But it is clear that if we're not collecting in that area, we can't spend the money in that area either. So it's sort of like CRA in that
Right.
same way.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Go ahead, please.
All right. Thank you. And so so similarly for single-family attached, which are largely townhouse or duplex units, there's also a fee that goes up from $1,100 in the east side up to $3,300. The difference between that and the single family is largely due to the trip generation rate itself being lower for a townhome than for a single family home. And then for multifamily, we've done it several ways. We've done it per unit. We've also done them per bedroom, given that you're largely a university town, and a lot of what you get are multi-bedroom units. The per bedroom unit for the multifamily unit makes the most sense. And then, so for the east side, it would be $587, and then for the southwest, it'd be $1,700 per bedroom for multifamily. Y'all don't have a whole lot of mobile residents. You may have some that get annexed in. Largely, those would probably be able to get a credit for those if you're tearing it down and then you're building something new. But there are a few that could happen out in the portions that you annex. Not that I see a whole lot. The only thing we are seeing is there is a resurgence of luxury RV parks, Airstreams, mobile homes or tiny homes on wheels. We're seeing a lot of communities now where they'll have pools and amenities and a whole center like that, and they're actually have little spots for whatever type of vehicle that you want to bring onto there. So we have started seeing those more in urban areas and in some of the communities that we work in. There are also, in essence, all types of land uses generate trips. So a place of worship, a community center, it generates trips today. It's not exempt. They would be likewise to pay a fee. So for the east portion of the city, it would be $500 per 1,000 square feet. Into the southwest, it'd be $1,500 per 1,000 square feet. Long-term care, which is largely ALFs or congregate care facilities, nursing homes, they would pay per 1,000 square feet. And then private education would also pay. Those would be your child care, your pre-K, your tutors, your private institutions. Public schools and charter schools are exempt per Florida statute. So Florida statute says governmental uses, charter schools, public schools are exempt from any type of impact fee or mobility fee. So that would just be for private education purposes only. There's also a fee for outdoor recreation uses and indoor recreation uses that are commercial in nature. If the city does a park, you're not going to pay a fee for a park. But if somebody comes out and builds a private pickleball court, so they charge for use, or private tennis courts, or more likely a mini golf type of establishment or outdoor amusement, they would pay for that type of use. Or if they have indoor climbing gym or a rock gym, a trampoline gym, they would pay. Again, if it's a new impact, if they're going into an existing building and retrofitting it, and that's a permitted use in there, oftentimes they wouldn't have any additional impact. They wouldn't pay a fee. This would largely be if they're creating a new impact to the system.
Commissioner Willetts?
Remind me about, so though we know a bunch of uses are connected to land use, you know, and zoning, what about when use changes? So I'm just, for instance, climbing gym near Depot Park, let's say it had originally, you know, had been built as warehouse or whatever, but then it changes use to recreation, but in that, I mean, maybe they have to have a development plan, you know, at some point because it's a big enough, whatever, but what happens when use changes, but they didn't actually have to come?
Right now, they'd be exempt from the process, and they would continue to be exempt from the process.
Unless they're
Unless
redevelop.
unless they're redeveloping it, and they've got to go out and do a site plan, and they've got to do parking and, you know, landscaping. You know, they're maybe changing something to the outside that requires, you know, additional development plans. If they submit a development plan, they'd look at it. Again, I think, you know, your staff more historically has been, you know, encouraging redevelopment, and really hasn't historically looked to charge for that type of use. So that's something that we're still kind of working on fine tuning in the ordinance language itself.
Okay, it came to mind. I thought this is the one that made me think of when uses kind of perhaps radically change from a use that is very low traffic, trip generation to high. So I'm sure that's a thought. I'll keep thinking of it too. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Before I give this back to you, I need to make a program note that the construction out front has hit a water line, so water to the building is out. Just a heads up. Be aware. Go ahead.
Likewise, industrial uses, again, you don't have a whole lot of industrial uses. If anything, they're probably a base land use of something that maybe they get some credit for or an offset. But if to the extent you had mini warehouse use or new office industrial come in, they would pay a fee likewise for mini storage units as well. But that fee is relatively low because they tend to generate pretty low overall trips. For office type of uses, think of an engineering firm or a real estate firm, they would pay roughly $1,200 per 1,000 square feet on the east side. If you had a fee going upwards to $2,700 in the southwest. If you included medical offices, which is freestanding emergency clinics, dentists, office veterinarians, they tend to generate about 2 times to 3 times the number of trips, so that they would pay a higher fee. The one exception are your large-scale hospitals. Because they are so large and they have so many ancillary uses, the actual underlying trip generation itself for those is about 10 trips per 1,000, which is what an office type of use is. So you'll see in there, hospital falls under the office use because they don't generate this. They generate a lot of traffic, but they generate a lot of traffic because they're large. So they don't necessarily charge the same rate as, say, some of the new emergency clinics that you see going out on Archer or Newberry, which are much smaller footprint. Those dudes tend to generate a lot per their size of their unit.
So is the VA exempted from this, or?
Yes, any type of federal, state, or
So you have health as well?
local entity would be exempt from those fees.
But not a new VA facility that is privately owned and rented to the VA.
Pardon me?
There's an application for a new VA facility that is owned privately, developed privately, and that is contracted out to the VA. And we're talking a pretty large building. There's one current one on Williston 34th, but there's another one being in somewhere in the review or application process.
Okay.
So that would be considered a medical office of some sort. even though it's VA services, but it's in a privately developed private. Okay, thank you.
I will get back to you on that one. I just want to check with your staff a little bit further on that in terms of the underlying ownership. Because if it is truly a governmental use like the building that we're in today, they don't pay. But if it is a private use rented to a governmental facility, because it's private, they would pay the fees generally.
Okay, thank you.
And then we also have finally, and we'll be wrapping up here relatively quickly, the retail uses. So we've included a category for your downtown, street level mixed use type development. So if you're on the first floor, bottom floor of a use, regardless of what type of use you are, grocery store, bank, fast food, what have you, because you are in a mixed use structure, you tend to generate lower overall trips, have a greater mixture of use and capture between those trips, so that they do have a lower overall rate. If you are freestanding retail use, say like a Dollar General or a Walmart, you pay a fee per 1,000 square feet. It ranges from $2,600 out on the east side up to $6,800 in the southwest. If you're a restaurant, a brewery, distillery, and you're not rehabilitating an existing use that was already there, there's a fee also for those type of establishments, also for clubs in downtown. I don't really see it having a whole lot of new ones of those. They tend to occupy buildings that have already been types of uses there, but you are a college town, so there are bars, there are restaurants that are out there that may come in from time to time. That would have a impact associated with it.
So, just to ask a thing that applies to all of this, that the formulas that you've used to come up with these fees, these are standard and consistent.
Correct.
And have been approved by Commerce and other cities in Florida.
Absolutely, and none of these are made out of context. They are already based on a number of studies that have been out there conducted. Some local governments don't have any of these uses at all, so they don't show up on their schedule. Others of them have them. We tend to find college towns tend to have more alcoholic beverage establishments than maybe a Flagler County or a Clay County type of establishment.
I'm shocked.
Then we also have high impact retail. These are your banks, your pharmacies, your grocery stores. These are types of uses that tend to generate about 100 trips per 1,000 square feet. And they do have a larger impact to the overall transportation system. So they pay a larger overall fee, ranging anywhere from $9,000 in the east side to $18,000 within the southwest portion of the city. Your convenience stores, your car washes, those type of uses, those tend to be one of the highest trip generators out there, so they would pay one of the higher overall fees. Likewise, your fast food type of restaurants also tend to generate quite a few trips as well.
Yes. Commissioner Willits.
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to, when we get around to the CPB Plan Board recommended in the East Mobility Fee area, or benefit area, good term there, exempting supermarkets. And I think in that vein, we should if we're going to go down that road of some sort of exemption, banks as well, because this is something that we've been looking at. So if bank and or other financial institution, well, maybe let's stick bank, a real, a bank. Just something when that comes up, perhaps if we're going down that road, like with supermarket, if we're going to apply all of these everywhere, or still within the retail side, supermarket was one of the recommendations from the plan board, but I don't think bank was, at least not listed as a recommendation. So if we're going to go down that road, I think we should pair it with bank, because it's very, very clear about a policy goal. So that's just thought to put in now while this is trickling.
Well, and just to disclose, today you exempt all uses. So that is also a policy level decision itself. You could basically say there is no fee for any use in the east side as a matter of policy. Or you could say, this type of use, because we want to encourage it, and it generates jobs, generates employment, we feel it should have a reduction or be exempt from there. So just so you know that today, you exempt all those uses. Then you've got a fee for overnight accommodations, which are largely hotels on a per room basis. And then one thing that we found is a lot of your buildings are starting to shrink, especially for convenience type of uses. So you're getting more and more, drive-through lanes for either banks that are freestanding ATMs or just a very small bank footprint and 3 drive-throughs, or you're getting Chick-fil-A's of the world with 2 or 3 drive-throughs and a small footprint. So this fee calculation includes both the building itself and largely the component that generates a lot of the traffic, which are the drive-through lanes themselves. So that way, if a drive-through lane comes in for a restaurant, a fast food restaurant, or for a bank, they would pay for that new facility. And likewise, you have vehicle cleaning, vehicle repairs, vehicle fuelings. Each one of those generates a fairly significant amount of traffic. This was here, we had the vehicle charging and fueling. Under the recommendation from the plan board, they recommended separating out the 2 of those. And they recommended the charging rate be at 25%. Since then, we've gone out and done our own data analysis, and it shows it's at roughly at 50%. If you want to make a policy decision consistent with the plan board at 25, that's well within your purview to do so. I'm just saying now we've had data because it's been a request that we've had from multiple clients of ours. And then this is just a sort of a comparison of, it's a little hard to see. The way your system is today, it's based on trips with a whole host of factors, and then a net cost that's been in place for a number of years, and that results in a fee. Under your mobility fee schedule, it's sort of predetermined, and it's based on current costs today as of 2025. So we've provided some analyses that show what the fee is roughly for some example projects you've had in the city, what it would be under the mobility fee, how much of a percentage increase in that, and then the county numbers. And I'll have to check the county calculations, because there seems to be a couple little discrepancies, but in all instances, the county's fees come in higher across the board for the city. So, there's just a percentage there showing 1 or 2 of them, the city's higher, but we've double checked, and the county's fees are higher for all land uses across the board than what we propose in the city. So we've kind of gone back and forth with this table as we've gone through other iterations. So it is more expensive than it is today. I'll just be upfront with that because costs have dramatically increased since these fees were last determined, and that partially reflects that. But we've also been cognizant, we've sort of used the county as a little bit of the high limit of the fee to make sure that we're coming in below Alachua County on these land uses. And so one option you do have besides exempting the fees is you could also phase them in at a different percentage. So, say the central fee, because it is a new fee, maybe not to hit development all at once, but you could say in year 1, we're going to charge 25, 35, 45, 55, pick a percentage, and then grow it gradually over a 4-year period. The Northwest and Southwest, they're already charged today, so there's probably not as much of a need to phase those in, but there is an increase, and be cognizant of that to allow developers to kind of plan for accordingly. You could also phase it in, say, okay, the Northwest and Southwest, we're going to do 70% of the fee in 26, 80% of it in 27, 29% or 90% of it in 28, and then in 2029, they would pull the full rate. Nothing compels you to say you have to do that, but if you wanted to help mitigate some of the impact, because it is a transition, that's well within your purview to do so. And they don't have to be uniform across the areas. We just feel the East and Central If the east is exempt outright and you still wanted to have a phase in for the central because it is brand new, that's something that you could direct us to do as well. And so with that, this has really been an opportunity to provide policy level discussions. If it so directs you, we can come back for another workshop and say, these are the results of whatever feedback that you gave us before we come back for the first ordinance, or the next time you see us, we come back for the first ordinance. Either way, first ordinance, you can give us direction to change things. Ultimately, you would not have a final decision until the second ordinance were to come up for adoption. So there are still several ways in this process to add some feedback to this. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all may have. I know it's going over a lot, and I'll be happy to go back to any slides that you all have. But those specific issues that we did call out for policy direction, it would help us to have some direction on those to help move this process forward.
Very good, thank you. It's a lot to work on, and we will work on it here. Let's go through one round of questions and lights up here, and then we'll go to the public, and then we'll come back up here to work forward. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for laying all this out the way you have. I don't know if I felt more prepared to make, you've laid out the exact policy direction that you want from us. We have an exact map. I love in the backup, it's one of the questions I've had consistently is how does this compare to the county? How does this compare to the east side? Not in what we were paying before versus what we're paying now, and not in a theoretical way, but with an exact.
Yeah.
And that's all in there. So this is great. I would love for every policy decision that we ever make as a city commission to have this amount of input. I know that you guys put in a lot of work, and this is a big decision, but I just want to thank you for the amount of time that you put into making sure that we have all that we need to be able to have this
and I give some props to your city planning board as well, because we, I think 3 times met with them, and so each time they said, it'd be helpful to have X, it'd be helpful to have this, and so that's really helped them make their recommendations to you all, but also help us give a more complete product to you as well. So thank you to the planning board for their input.
Yeah, for sure. So on the next steps, because I'm kind of trying to figure out where we could be or where we stand in all of this. You mentioned before, just briefly, that you're still going back and forth on ordinance language related to redevelopment, things like that. We also, I don't know if we said it bluntly, but the state did not accept our comprehensive plan amendments due to SB 180. So it seems like that potentially changes our timeline here, right? If you guys are still drafting or still going back if you're still going back and forth with staff, and we now have to at least wait until there's a glitch bill on SB 180 in July, then where does that leave us in terms of this process?
I think there's another item coming up, but we do think, to the best of my knowledge, this has probably been one of the first ones that's submitted since the SB 180. So in terms of their comment back to us, I think it was pretty boilerplate. It didn't really get into anything. I think what we'll look at for your direction is to reach back out to them and say, do you understand that the city already has a program? City already charges a fee. These aren't brand new things that are going to be put in place. A lot of this already exists, and the vast majority, and we did not include the fee in the language. So, that's a whole other level policy decision. I would say that, if anything, most of that language was clean up, transitioning to a system, and I think it'd probably just be a better explanation to the state under that. Their first response to any comp plan amendments lately has been 180. But I think walking them through it and saying, these are the changes and these are how it's not a new impact, but it's consistent with statute, and is basically replacing a system that's been in place for 20 plus years.
Right.
But yes, it is still going to add a little bit of time, and that's why I said there's still time for us to provide feedback on the ordinance and whatnot.
Right. Speaking of the ordinance, and you mentioned that you were going to be talking about redevelopment. Redevelopment's one thing that I've tried to make sure that we continue to incentivize, which I think, as you said, our staff has worked on has been focused on for quite a while. How do what we have in our ordinance that you've written here, how does that compare to other cities that you guys have worked in terms of how we're analyzing that change of use? Are we more restrictive, less restrictive?
Right now, you are far less restrictive. I'd say half encourage infill, so some of them don't, just allow it outright. If you're using an existing building, you're not paying anything. Others are saying, well, if it's been vacant for a year, you don't get any credit at all, and we're gonna charge you the full rate. So it raises the gamut quite significantly. I will say most of local governments will say, what is your last land use that was there? What is being proposed? Based on your fee today, what would be the fee for the existing land use? What would be the fee for the new land use? And you pay the difference.
Right.
So that I would say probably more than half of ours, that's how they're structured.
Correct me, that's how we're structured as well, right? Like if you're doing
I would say
that-
you're a little bit more flexible. I'd say that you actually probably give a little bit more benefit to the doubt in terms of overall impact of types of uses downtown. So I think it's still something to, like, you've got a lot of buildings that have had multiple tenants over multiple years. I think some of the stuff along 4th Street and 6th Street, you've probably been a little bit flexible in terms of the types of uses that have gone back in there. And also, I guess, I would say that the vast majority of that is been exempt from the fee because it falls within Zone A
Okay.
already today. I'm not sure, you could probably speak, Andrew could probably speak better to like the examples in maybe Butler. That'd probably be a better example of a change of use.
Right. Did you want to speak? Is that you? Did you want to do this?
I was going to say, I think as Jonathan points out, it's a couple of different factors. One, some of the areas that we were talking about are in Zone A, so there's no fee. Two, and maybe even more importantly, in some context, currently the TMPA fee, as you heard, is assessed at the DO stage, at the development order stage, which is when you get a site plan approval. What we're talking about here is in part shifting that to the building permit stage. So you're going to have things that would otherwise not require a development plan and therefore not be subject to the TMPA fee. With a building permit, that's when we're going to be assessing it in some cases.
I didn't realize, thought it was the opposite. That was my next series of questions, is when exactly are we assessing this? John, is that your understanding of it as well? John? I thought I read this and it was at the development order stage and not at the building permit stage.
Well, I think development order is a trigger. I think we're still probably working out what the assessment stage is.
Like when
But
we
no,
collect all
I'm
the-
sorry, development plan.
Right.
If they submit a development plan, that's when they strip the threshold. I'm not sure if we've gotten down to the point of where they actually pay it, whether it be a development plan or building permit. Because there's some statutory provisions in terms of when it gets paid. The trigger to pay it is if you have to submit a development plan.
Okay.
So I think we're still working out the nuances, but I think it'd be closer to when they actually come in for they get their plan approved, but when they come in for their building permits, is likely when they pay the fee itself, so.
That seemed to, just from not knowing very much about this, that seemed to me to be the best of both worlds, which is that apparently it's easier on staff at the site plan level, because that's when you're receiving it, and that's when you're getting everything in, but then you don't actually have the money in hand in development until you're actually going to build. And so if you're assessing it then, and then you're doing it later, but this is above my pay grade, so I'll leave that up to you all. But the one thing that came in is that I noticed here in your backup is an abandoned, when a related redevelopment is an abandoned structure. So if a structure is abandoned for 3 years, if a building is empty for 3 years, it becomes an abandoned structure, at which point you now have to pay the full freight of whatever is coming in there. So you have a restaurant, it was a restaurant 3 years, if you're at 3 years, 1 month, that trips that, you are now an abandoned structure, and so if you want to build a new restaurant in there, you have to now pay all of those impact fees at that point.
I think that's part of what we were saying about redevelopment is we're still looking at some of those specific policies. What you see before you is our initial draft of the ordinance, and those are ones that that are common from what I deal with, but staff's going through now and looking at those and saying, we want to handle it this way within Gainesville. So that's something we're still working on in terms of the ordinance stage.
All right.
Which is why we haven't brought to you today saying, hey, this is the final ordinance, where we're not talking a whole lot about it, because there is some additional work that needs to be done on the ordinance itself.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to jump immediately
Yeah, no,
into
no,
detail, but you
that's
guys
fine.
provided it, so, you know, that's my initial reaction, is just to jump immediately into detail. Let's see here, yeah, development order stage. The city plan board recommended exempting affordable housing utilizing our IZ policy, correct? Would that mean, in the way they wrote that, that seems to me that if a building has a 10% set aside at 80% AMI, it is 100% exempted? Or, I know, once again, I'm getting back into details, but I think it's important how we define what affordable housing is, so we're not exempting what is majority market rate housing with, you know, if it's a mixed income. Have you seen in other areas
Yeah, no.
how they structure
the
this
intent
so that
is
we are?
that they exempt the affordable component of it. So if 10% of the units are affordable, that 10% is exempted. The market rate pays the market rate.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, we'll work on that language, but I think that's what's been the attempt is, if it meets the definition of affordable, however you define that, and you classify it as affordable, they don't pay on those units. Anything market rate, well, they would pay on those units.
Right. And then can you explain, you mentioned electric vehicle charging stations use 50% less, they produce 50% less trips. I wasn't following, they mentioned 25% reduction as a policy vehicle to incentivize more electric vehicles. And then you said you have data that shows it's actually a 50% reduction in overall trips, correct? Is that
Correct.
am
I
understanding this right?
mean, there's a couple of components to a trip. There's a trip generation itself, then the trip length, and then the trip purpose, whether it's a new trip specifically to charge or it's a pass-by trip. So if it's, you know, most gas stations, the rate tends to be about 90% for pass-by. What we've seen for charging, they're going there to charge their vehicle. Then the restaurant or the other uses is likely what gets to pass by from the charging station itself. They're not going to the restaurant and then charging. They're having to go there because they got to charge their
Right.
vehicle, which is just part of the nature of the beast with charging the vehicles.
So it's like an amenity of the restaurant.
Well, you know, from what we've seen is the other communities, you know, yours right now, the best example is those ones that are located in Butler. They're going to go there because they know it's a Tesla charger station. While they're there waiting, they have 10 different restaurants to go choose from to eat. The purpose of them going there is to charge their vehicle, not necessarily go to eat at the restaurants. That's what we found in terms of the stations. Versus the gas station itself doesn't tend to be the end destination. It's one of multiple trips that you're making. Very few people go from their house to get gas or from the hotel to get gas and then go back home. They go 10 different other places. You know, what we found for electric vehicles, if you don't happen to have charging apparatus where you're at, or you're on the interstate system or something, your destination is to charge your vehicle. So the charging station is the destination, whereas largely the fuel pumps, there's something on the way to something else.
And then on the exempting of specific uses within specific areas or exempting all uses within entire areas, can you go back to the map of the different zones that you have there?
Oh,
Uh-oh.
sorry. Let's see if I can get through this here. There we go. All right.
Of what you're proposing, the proposed zones.
Yeah, I'll go to the proposed one that has the overlay, so it'll probably be a little bit easier to.
There we go.
There we go. So that is the teal color is the east side, purple is central, the orange is southwest, the yellow is the northeast, and then the A, B, C, D, and E. Those are your existing zones today, laid over them.
Is it, have you seen in other areas, and would this pass legal muster? Because these are all fairly large zones, and they're not necessarily where we're looking to redevelop. I mean, I'd imagine that a lot of the east side would have significant amount of auto uses that are on North Main, right? That are not necessarily, that's not like a redevelopment incentive that we're looking at bringing. I mean, what we're focused a lot on is, you know, development along the Waldo Road corridor or along eastern portion of University. When we're talking about the central zone, we're not necessarily looking all the way at 34th. It's, you know, downtown, maybe some surrounding areas within that. can we do smaller overlay zones that would exempt?
If you wanted to, if you were so compelled to do a smaller overlay, you could do that as well. You could say, hey, let us look at, MLK or 8th in, or, Main Street in, maybe not all the way up to 6. That's something that we could look at as well. Or you could say, well, what if we move this portion of the zone to B and the other portion to keep it in A? That's something we could do as well.
Okay.
So yeah, if you wanted to do a subzone, so not everything was exempt, that's certainly a policy level decision that can be made.
Okay. So that's something that you think just offhandedly that or that you've seen other areas.
I mean, that's
do that
essentially
sort
what you're all doing today. I mean, just you've exempted a large area. You're making a policy decision for economic development reasons and to encourage, development in areas that hasn't had it before. You're making a policy level decision. So,
of. All right. That's all the questions I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Mr. Willets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So our AHAC's incentives recommendations report, it did recommend, on recommending 2, that we modify impact fee requirements. I don't think that we don't typically call this legally in Florida an impact fee, correct?
correct. In this term, because it's based on a plan of improvements, it is a mobility fee. There are similar characteristics to impact fees, but yeah, we are calling it a mobility fee.
For most people, I think this particularly some of the dollar amounts we're talking about, this isn't it. For most people, this is their understanding of what an impact fee. Pay for new roads because there are new development. So, but our AHAC has, their general recommendation is that for affordable housing, impact fees at least are modified somehow. So I think it would be appropriate for affordable. The recommendation from the plan board, did it say all affordable plus IZ, or did they just only talk about IZ? Because, you know, all the other affordable units of lots of different.
I think they were looking to have a definite, you know, whatever ultimately the commission's comfortable with, but however the city wants to define that global term. You know, statute has a definition for affordable, and there's some criteria that go through it. You all have your own definitions as well. So I think their intent was, however the city is classifying affordable, I believe, and you know, if I'm wrong, however the city classifies or elects to classify affordable, those units should be exempt.
Okay, got it. That's what I want to get to, because I, just for an example, one of the examples that's in the comparison sheet is Royal Park Apartments, now known as Banyan Hammock, and that is a 100% affordable, 384 beds, 192 units, and that goes from paying a current TMPA fee of $100,000 to $459,000, which is an increase of $359,000. And Mr. Manager, if you can remind me, what did we contribute to Banyan Hammocks for Connect Free?
A little bit shy of about $500,000.
So I want to give that as an example of affordable. I mean, like that almost wipes out what we contributed on one side. And granted, I understand sometimes you just take the money out of one pocket and putting it in another. But so I do think that we should, when this comes to ordinance, that we should exempt affordable housing. I think we should set it at the 80%, so that workforce between 80 and 120. I'm open to entertaining that we set it at 80, the 80% AMI, not all the way up to 120% AMI. So the example of lot 10, if that's all going to be 120% AMI, should they be exempted? Granted, that's a downtown building. I don't even know what the trip generation for that one particular would be, and thus the fee. But I think we should entertain that if we do this, that we need to set it at 80% AMI. Not that we have a bunch between 80 and 120 now, but the future may be a little more with Live Local, with some of the other things, with our ability. We established that our community land trust in the future could be more of a mixed income model and could go to 120% AMI. So I think now we have to start considering, when we say affordable, are we saying 80, 120? Because we have multiple definitions, actually. You know, not just one definition, but so I think we should consider that. But I do think we need to be real serious. I think affordable housing needs to be exempted. I think that would be it would follow along in at least the spirit of AHAC's recommendations, if not the full legal, because impact fee versus this is slightly different. but this was a conversation specifically with AHAC. And then the convenience stores and fueling stations. So a convenience store with fueling station gets whacked twice,
Yes.
despite the fact that we've just established that people who go to gas stations are doing multiple, trips,
That's how many trips they generate. We're giving them a generous pass-by rate of almost 90%, but they're generating over 1,000 trips, between the two of them. So a pump generates roughly 250 per pump, and then the building itself generates 1,000 per the building, and then we give some reduction for the two of them, so we're not double dipping on either one of them. Then we give them a further reduction for pass-by trips, and it's just they're generating so much traffic. Their fees are still that certainly higher. I mean, so some of the places we've gone to, they're upwards to 30, 40,000 a pump, and but they generate a lot of traffic.
Yeah, I'm guilty of going to a gas station literally only to get a Twinkie, so it is real. Or only to fuel when I have to go to the airport the next day, when I'm traveling the next day. Nothing else on my trip, just gas, because I've put it.
Now, I've not done one yet for a Buc-ee's. I'm sure that's going to come along sometime. That'll probably be a bit different characteristic, and they're probably going to have some of their own data that says people stay there for longer, and they're probably not generating as much traffic. But but they're also 80,000 square feet plus 100 pumps, so
Right.
they're their own animal.
All right. And then, so what if residential spaces, residential uses that build zero parking, that choose to build zero parking? I know there's gonna be a lot of Uber trips dropped off. There's gonna be a lot of Uber Eats, a lot of, there's still, in this world,
I
there's a
know
lot
the
of
city
traffic.
itself. You had for 10. I think you had for a decade. You required no parking for a lot of units for a decade, and I'm not sure that necessarily reduced any. I'm not sure how many people took you up on the no parking.
Well, we're about to have one with very, very little parking, with 13 spaces for, I forget how many hundreds of bedrooms. So,
600 units.
yeah, it's a lot. So that's a question I have out there, if there's some way to,
No,
deal with that.
any applicant will also have the ability to submit data to show that because there's some type of unique use and they have less of an impact than we've calculated. Because all of our stuff's documented. We're showing what the unit is, what the trip generation is, the length and all that. If they can come in and show data that because they have no parking, they're generating half the trips, they can make the case that they pay half the fee. There's always an anomaly that's out there for uses, so the ordinance does provide for that if they are something unique. So I'd say that'd probably be the better way to handle those one-off. If you start getting a lot of them coming in, you can make that case, but it's certainly something that we could look at.
all right. And then for, understanding the full conversation with the plan board, and forgive me, I didn't watch it, so, but Mr. Manager, you maybe will help me understand. The recommendation on IZ, is there any conversation or staff conversation about if we don't include it on IZ as an exemption, that opens it up to be an offset to make them whole? All right, well, we'll get to that in a moment. And then my last thing is for smaller overlay zones, is all your data already geocoded and your calculations can just kind of be run? Can you just draw the box in a different place and run it? Or is it going to take a lot of work to potentially look at different zones?
There'll be a little work that we're going to have to do to it, but if you're just talking zone A and B, I think there's something that we can work on. Ultimately, we want you to be comfortable with what it's going to do. So we're going to work with the city in whatever direction you give us.
Okay, thank you. And then there may be some conversation of exempting all of the east side parts, or maybe that zone isn't perfectly, and I'm open to the conversation, but definitely I like the plan board's recommendation on supermarkets, but I'd add in banks and probably the ATMs as well, because not having to pay an ATM fee is important. And it's not a full service bank, but it's an ATM. So.
Or maybe financial institutions, a credit union may want to go.
Sure, I just worry about when you use financial institutions, it's check cashing.
Oh, okay.
Though they probably use existing spaces as well,
Okay.
the same way as the restaurant doesn't necessarily, they go into an existing building. So, but that's why I would be a little more specific about it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Mr. Manager, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, well, first I wanted to let everybody know that they're free to use the bathroom with Wild Abandoned. The water is back on, so everybody go wild. I did want to talk a little bit about Commissioner Willett's point about the, how the fee interfaces with the variety of affordable housing projects that we have, including our IZ policy. I would say we've had a lot of conversation internally. I would recommend that the commission consider perhaps having two paths, like one for the projects like projects like Woodland Park, projects like the one that Commissioner Willetts mentioned. Those are all subject to Florida Housing Finance Corporation agreements, state agreements, and those are ones that are 100% affordable. And so we can treat those separately and provide a full exemption for those. For the projects that are largely market rate but are subject to our IZ policy, my recommendation would be to leave off an automatic exemption for those, for the exact reason that Commissioner Willetts brought up, is that it's a tool in our toolbox from the city side to be able to offset the cost of those units and provide that incentive in accordance with your IZ policy. So that you could kind of provide general policy direction, and that's sort of what you want us to do. But if we provide just a blanket exemption for those, then it's one less tool that we have to offset the cost of the unit with when we're negotiating with the developer. So you don't necessarily have to give sort of, I want, very detailed direction, but if that's sort of a viable path in having those sort of the split between a true sort of all affordable housing development that either we're participating financially in or that the state is participating in, that's a different animal than some of the developments that you all have seen where we've had that 10% set aside according to policy.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioner Book.
Very complex concept. It's overlapping with a lot of things. I do agree, Commissioner Eastman, you were talking about the backup and the policy decisions, and I felt that was very, very helpful in the way they presented that, because often we're given something and say, recommend this, do this, and I always like to hear what might be the positives and the negatives, the advantages and the disadvantages, and these allow us to see what the big picture, when we do get to that large area of some direction that we're giving to draft an ordinance in the future, Mr. Mayor, we're probably going to want to take those several separately because they're so complex, and we may, disagree with an individual one, but that's just a thought, as we get there later in this discussion. Commissioner Willetts, you were talking about some of the granular types of things, and the one that it made me think about was these exemptions, and you're right. If we have for example, a supermarket that's in a big box retail store, and they also have some gas pumps, how that's impacted by these impact fees, because they do multiple things. And this is not to pick on Walmart. Walmart just happens to have multi-use. So it cuts across many of these categories. And what happens when a business comes in or a development that comes in that then does that?
So typically they would pay per the components unless they can show otherwise. So they would pay for their store. Now, if it's I believe they're called if it's a super center, i.e. it's a grocery store and a general merchandise, that falls under the retail category. If it's a standalone Publix itself, it falls under a grocery store, because that's how the underlying trip generation rates are done. So there is a trip generation rate for the super centers. But we've also lessed out the gas stations and the gas pumps for that. If they can provide data to show, in some of these big corporations, they have studies that they've done, 10 other communities. So they can bring that in there and say, well, look, this is what we have in Ocala, St. Augustine, Jacksonville. We're generating so many trips for here. We'd like a reduced rate for that. But in general, we found that most of the components are separate. And they do tend to get trips drawn individually for the gas, for the super centers. But the super centers do have their own trip generation rate. So that's kind of already captured and built into the data itself.
Well, it's similar in nature. You have your mega convenience store now. You have a gate, a racetrack, a Wawa that has also multi-use. They have a restaurant inside, full service, pretty much. And then you have, your gas pumps, and that may be a smattering of retail in there. And so I guess the categories you've already defined, you would know where they fit in there. They're not getting, for example, targeted for multiple charges under multiple categories. They're going to fit under some umbrella category.
Yes, for the convenience stores especially, they're an umbrella, they're the building plus the food pump, the fuel stations. If they happen to have charging stations, which some of them may start to have in the future, they'd also pay for part of those charging stations as well.
Yeah, and your super centers often have a large grocery store now, and it's almost a separate and distinct component. So that's just something to understand there. And if I'm understanding, Mr. Manager and Mr. Paul, all of our basically government property and entity is completely exempt. So that's the Gainesville Housing Authority too, I think, right? If they build Woodland Park, that has nothing to do with impact fee if it's considered. I'm asking that question. This is UF, Santa Fe College, GRU potentially properties if it's considered governmental, Woodland Park or housing authorities. There appears to be, and you have educational institutions, a tremendous amount of property geographically that may be exempt from this completely. Am I understanding that correctly?
Just a point of clarification there. So today we are applying the transportation fees to all types of development within the city if it goes through development review. And so the only things that we're really exempting are, in terms of ownership, would be like things that are in the UF master plan. They go through a separate review process in some cases. So, but we've charged our parks department, wild spaces, public places for expansions that they've made, government buildings, whether it's Alachua County or even the city's buildings. So today, we are not exempting government uses. That could be something that we wanted to consider, but as you're pointing out, that could apply to a lot of different types of development around the city, and maybe that's not something that we would necessarily want to do, because the goal of this is really to account for traffic impacts or transportation impacts on the system. So if we start exempting a bunch of things, then maybe we have a lot of impacts in one area of the city, and we're not accounting for those in terms of the fees that we're collecting.
That's a good clarification. So in that same vein, for example, the University of Florida declared that they want to build X amount of housing, and they want to build it on their footprint, over the next X amount of years. How does that overlay with what we're doing here?
That's their master.
Right. So if it's in the UF master plan, then we don't really get involved. But if it's on University Avenue in the city, then we would account for those impacts.
If it comes off their geographic footprint under the master plan,
Right.
potentially in this new configuration, it might be subject to these impact fees, these mobility fees.
That's correct. And they are today as well. So that's not really a change in the way that we do things currently.
All right, well, thank you for that clarification. So, Mr. Manager, I do think it's good that we're progressing towards alignment with several of these big documents. It's been a number of years, and they've all sitting out here, and once they're in alignment, it'll be far better for future iterations of the commission, 5 and 10 years. But whether it's a master plan in Parks and Rec, bike and ped, we have the land use code, we have the comp plan we're working on. I think this is really the critical time to do that. I think it's good. As it relates to exemptions in general, I will want to hear maybe from the city attorney after we hear from the public that just deals with, equity and disparity in charges for different types of use across different geographic areas, because I think we're already providing a tremendous amount of incentives and monies and funding sources to areas that we need, like the east side of Gainesville. Probably could talk about 10 or 11 of those right off the bat, and that's appropriate. I'm not sure that we want to exempt geographic areas if we move forward and then make, for example, building in Northwest Gainesville almost triple the cost of building in East Gainesville, I think, or building multifamily to cost almost double or 250% what it might be for a single-family residential. I think those disparities might be something I'd like to hear about from a defendability standpoint after we talk with the public there. And do our 8 municipalities in Alachua County, we know Alachua County's costs are a little higher, they have a mobility fee. That's probably good for the city of Gainesville, that it's higher in Gainesville, right? Because we want that development and progress with inside the city limits. What about our 8 other municipalities in Alachua County?
I know Newberry has one, High Springs has one, and Alachua. I'm not. Newberry's is pretty comparable to the counties. I'm not sure about Alachua's. Last I saw, theirs was on the lower side, but they may be reconsidering theirs. Out east, I don't believe Hawthorne and Melrose or any of McIntosh, any of the smaller ones have any type of fees at all.
That might be helpful, Mr. Manager, contextual information, whenever the next time this comes up is. Let's show our county and maybe even some of the surrounding counties, that's probably something that you already have available to you, Mr. Bosse. What are they and where are they? Because we want folks to be coming to the city of Gainesville as a destination, and knowing those fees could be very helpful in the structure of our fees.
Mr. Mayor, I think in the backup, one of the backup items does have a comparison of specific developments in Gainesville comparison to the county, to Alachua County. But in terms of, I think, other jurisdictions, I'm not sure if we have that right now, but we could certainly dig some of that up.
I think that's it. These are just some of the questions I had. It is, like I said, I'm glad we're moving towards alignment. That's probably the most important thing. And from a philosophical standpoint, I would not want to use the mobility fee as a way to essentially increase fees, tax, doesn't matter what you call them, on our community. It so happens we already have a mobility fee under, some different terminology, so that's pretty important for the public to understand also. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. So I have a few comments, and then we'll go to the public, and then come back up here, and we can make some decisions, or some recommendations to staff, some direction to staff as we move forward. The first thing I would say is that I do think, given schedules, that we should have another session like this,
Okay.
partially to give the commission a chance to work with staff individually, and to then, having had this opportunity today, this lets us know what each other are thinking, and then we can talk individually to staff, and then we come back and all talk together more with the benefit of more education, and give you better direction before that goes to the first reading.
Okay.
And certainly we can have conversation about that, but I know that's where I'm leaning at this point. A question, a statement and then a question. What we're doing here is creating a more formal, more dependable structure, more consistent structure so when somebody wants to come build something, they can just look at the book and know exactly what they're getting into.
Correct.
So there should be very few surprises as a part of this. Now, there will be a few things that are open for negotiation, such as the inclusionary zoning opportunities and that kind of thing, I would think. But mostly this goes toward the consistency that I'm very interested in providing to folks who want to build here. This gives us better funding opportunities to improve mobility, whether those are streets or sidewalks or bus stops or any of those sort of things. It is a sort of a dedicated funding source to be able to do those things. And Mr. Manager, anytime I'm wrong, feel free to jump in.
No, you're right, Mr. Mayor, and importantly, your TMPA program and potentially its replacement. It's an important funding source, particularly for grant matches, whether it's at the state or federal level, because it's a local match that we can provide to leverage our funding to be able to do even larger projects.
Very good. So it's important that we keep that in mind, that this is, we want to be careful where we say that we're going to make something entirely excluded. That we're going to just say half the city is not going to be a part of this, because that means we're not going to have funding, or we'll have less funding to build the things that particular part of the city desperately needs. Because I also understood from what you said that we have to be careful that we're not charging, for instance, on State Road 121, the surrounding areas, when Weyerhaeuser eventually develops hundreds of units and all the things that surround that, we're not going to be able to just transfer money that we collect there to build sidewalks in North Lincoln Heights and Southeast Gainesville. That's not an acceptable
Correct.
swap.
It's not an acceptable use of funds.
So if we want the sidewalks to be built in Southeast Gainesville, we need to be careful that we offer some opportunity for revenue to flow from things that are built there. Now, we need to be really careful because we do want to incentivize building in some parts of the city, certainly to include commercial corridors in East Gainesville. Further, we want to, I would think, incentivize building in areas that we have already said are business parks, are things that where we want people to come. For instance, all of downtown, we want to be really, surgical about how we apply this for downtown to incentivize building downtown. We want to incentivize building in Innovation Square, the Innovation District, particularly for specific kinds of things, like I would think laboratory space and light industrial manufacturing. The sorts of things that we have long said we want to happen in those places. If we want those things to happen in those places, then we ought to apply incentives to build those there. So we could say, tell me if I'm wrong, but we could apply very specific exemptions to industrial or medical office use, for instance, in the Innovation District corridor, correct?
Correct.
I completely agree, Commissioner Willets, that we should, anything that is 100% affordable housing, that should be exempted, because it's ridiculous for us to help, to invest in something and then take money back from it. That doesn't make any sense. There are other ways to do that make more sense. I'm a little bit conflicted about the difference between 120% workforce and 80%. Because we want the workforce also. I mean, we want that to happen. So I need to think some more about, and to talk more about how we would apply that. But I don't want us to forget about the areas of the city where we have said we want specific kinds of business to be attracted here. We want startups and next level from startups, particularly the sorts of things that are likely to be in Gainesville, like medical labs and biotech and that kind of thing, which is going to fit between industrial and medical office and office. So we need to think carefully about how we approach those things as well, which doesn't mean we're automatically going to get them. It just puts one more tool in the toolbox to try to attract those businesses as we work toward real economic development. Those are just some of the thoughts I have. I have a whole lot more thoughts, but that's why I want to have another meeting, so we can have opportunity to work through all this with staff and come back and before we make final direction to you all. All right, Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and go to the public.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Adrian Hayes Santos.
Good afternoon, Commission. Adrian Hayes Santos here on behalf of Gainesville for People, which is a volunteer organization focused on reducing the housing costs by increasing the supply of housing. In general, we're not supportive of impact fees. While we fully support transit, bike, and pedestrian projects, they should be funded another way, not just on new residents and new development, which rises the cost of housing and also hurts small businesses as well. This impact fee will development right now is like definitely in portions of our city, downtown, East Gainesville. I mean, Innovation Square is mentioned. It's not happening, and one of those reasons is because projects aren't penciling out. Construction costs in Gainesville are higher than surrounding areas. I think Lot 10 is an example of you've all had to work very hard to try to make that project work, and the main reason why it wasn't working was because of not being able to make the project pencil out. By adding substantial costs to a project, that makes it less likely to happen, which is then counterproductive to the city schools of trying to focus on these areas and trying to have redevelopment in the core of our city. I think if you do move forward, I think exempting areas that are focus areas, exempting the central area and the East Gainesville area, and then also spreading out the time frame. I know there's 4 years, and maybe looking at 6-7 years, kind of like spreading it out a little more so the impacts aren't as hard on projects, because people are looking 2 or 3 years out on a project to even like start to move forward on it. So knowing that would be good. One other thing, if you do on the IZ of exempting that, I would say instead of having that as a negotiation, know that up front. Like if you do the IZ, then you get those units exempt, because when you have it as a negotiation, they're trying to pencil out projects before they even get to the city. So if you know up front those are going to get exempted, then that they can pencil that in earlier in the development process, and it won't be a kind of having to figure it out later, and they might have already said, oh, we're not going to move forward on this project because we're not 100% sure we're going to get that those mobility fees exempt. So just kind of to your point earlier, Mr. Mayor, about having kind of consistency, knowing before you get forward what are the things you're actually going to get, not having to negotiate those later. But thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Blount?
Welcome, Mr. Blau.
Hello. I don't know if we can get back that multimodal slide. Can you put that up? And I also want to say on the
Which slide, sir? Sorry.
you had one that had to color coded for things like boardwalk.
Okay.
On the affordable, on the waivers, on the assessment, on the fee for affordable, I hope we are tougher than the policy so far. That affordable should be defined. I would like to see the affordable as 50%, but if not that, then tier that. And there's been so many other issues where we talked about tiering incentives. So there should be a maximum waiver for 50% affordable and a little less of a waiver for 80%, et cetera. And please don't let anybody say 100% of AMI is affordable. And on this map, there's one little piece of boardwalk missing, Mr. Mayor, where you have multiple times, I want to say promised, maybe you just mentioned, a boardwalk in the downtown area just east of GRU over the Piketon Creek from 4th Avenue to 5th Avenue. You've mentioned that multiple times. I wish that was on this map. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blount. I would note that we don't actually own that property right now, so.
That was our last speaker, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to just get through this, and then before we go to the next item, Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Blount, for, well, I will point out that it's hard to see on here, but I do see the trail going through that GRU, and I'm seeing a nodding head from Scott Wright, who worked on it. So I think that is explicitly on there. It is ambitious, as you said, because we do not own that property, but it's, I've actually, going to the, so I'm glad we're on the map, because this is another thing I wanted to bring up. I think that this is a very good mobility, at least the multimodal portion of this. It's quite good. I've actually tabled with this map at a bicycle event and tried to show people, and it's a good vision overall for how you can use the existing right-of-way, whether it's an expansion of existing sidewalks, where it's unlikely that we would be able to put on-street bicycle facilities, or turning things into one-way, or expanding out the multi-use trails. I will say, from our last conversation, that in our existing comp plan, we have the Gainesville Trail Network designated in future in the backup in the data and analytics section, which includes the Hogtown Creek Greenway going north of 8th Avenue up through, all the way up to, I think, 39th. It's a very old document, so it is hard to tell exactly where the road is, but it goes all the way through. We mentioned this in the last meeting, but because we are getting rid of these series of maps that are currently in our transportation plan within our comp plan, and we are now moving to this plan, I would like to see the, there's a couple of trails that are further south that may or may not be feasible that are in this current one, but the ones going north of 8th Avenue, I would still like to see in there. There's other things that I think are important in that in terms of development facing that area, making sure that we can enforce, some of our overlays. I would like to see the Hogtown Creek Greenway just kind of overall be extended up north of 8th Avenue, like we have in our current comp plan. But I think overall it's if we are able to have a dedicated source of funding that gets some of these things in the ground and built, we would have we would have we will have a much better city in 20 or 30 years. This is it's just lines on a map, but I encourage you to, when you're on it, if you're walking, not driving, but walking, bring your phone out and kind of look at what what an expanded sidewalk along that road would be, what a trail in there would be. You could see it being a huge improvement over our existing transportation system. And so thank you for all the work that staff and the consultant put into it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a similar experience with using the maps from the mobility plan, this new mobility plan, to tell people when they say, have you ever thought about this, or the city should do this? I say, well, it is on a map now. Of course, funding is the big question. But to say like, no, we really, staff and the community, the input, multiple plans, how they get layered, that this is the potential plan. Really at this point, if we had unlimited money, we would start and build it all. But I agree, and we talked about the Hogtown Creek trail system. We did talk about that, and so it is important that it gets in more of a plan. I know it's not in the current mobility plan that we passed, but I agree. So part of this is like catching up the fee, the actual dollar amounts. This is catching up for what is it, like 20 years? We haven't increased the amount. Is that about right? 20 years of not increasing it?
Well, it as the city grew and changed, and the originally it was the TCEA. I'm probably warming Ms. Lazari's heart talking about this. Went from the TCEA, and then eventually, and then state law changed, and we changed it to the TMPA. So each of the zones have a kind of date stamp, when they were created, and they have different fees that are calculated based on the projects at the time and the estimated cost. So yes, I mean, to answer your question,
it's
yes,
because we
many of the
wouldn't have
fees
been
are-
raising the fee every year.
Correct.
Because you have to have some. First of all, you have to have a plan. It's going to be attached to projects,
Correct.
and then cost,
Correct.
trip generation, all of those kind of things. Okay,
Right.
so it's not something that would be easy to change every year, but it is also been a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
So some of this feels like catching up.
Right. No, I think that's a fair way to look at it.
Okay.
Or to consider it.
I do have concerns that like anytime you have in essence an impact fee on new development, it squelches new development. That is a concern of mine. Same time, the mayor posted recently, we have 10,000 new neighbors over the past 5 years. If they had all been in multifamily in Southwest, that would have been $17 million extra dollars. I know they currently pay something, but that's a pretty big number. If they'd all been in Southwest and multifamily. But I do have concerns about how we set it, the actual dollar amount. Now, if it's all for new things, not just for catching up on infrastructure, that's important to me as well. And it sounds like this is legally not really supposed to be about catching up on past infrastructure maintenance. Though some people say some of the new roads have always been needed, and so that's not that there's a lot of new roads in this plan, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. So I would like us to give direction to staff to bring this back again at a general policy meeting in April. Is that? I mean, I don't want to just be indefinite with it.
Yeah.
Mr. Manager, that sound.
I'm looking at staff for some. Yep, I'm getting head nods, so I think that's fine. I think the timing will work too with the legislative session, because I would be concerned if the state is already holding up our comp plan amendment and is as was discussed, it doesn't talk about fees. The Senate Bill 180 provisions also apply to land development code amendments as well, although of course we don't send those to the state for review. So I think the additional time will be beneficial for multiple reasons.
Right, so that gives us a chance to see what the legislature has fixed or not fixed to send to the governor. But it also gives us further time then, because that's not passing anything. That's another discussion like today, hopefully more specific. But we'll still be waiting for the ordinance itself to come back, which we can wait until after the governor has the final period to sign or not sign a glitch bill as we move forward. Commissioner Book.
Yeah, where you just left off is right. I like that idea of it coming back. We're probably going to get some robust feedback merely by fact that we're speaking about it today, and it's one that probably a lot of people will not understand without really delving into it, just like it was difficult for us. So I think that's good. I would not be prepared to move forward with any type of ordinance at this point and say, although it needs some direction. Commissioner Wiltz also had an idea that I thought was important, which he's alluding to, keeping up with the costs of implementing today, not trying to retroactively apply costs to development we have. So, Mr. Manager, in that regard, my thought was, I realize we have a formula that appears to have some backbone and basis in the way that it's been developed in other municipalities, and we just want to make sure that whatever figures are coming back to us, they're designed to deal with existing new development, not trying to make up for anything in the past. That would be very unfair from a community standpoint.
And prohibited by state law, so that's also helpful. We can't address backlog with
The question I had that's just a real big picture question is, do exemptions, and since you've been done, Mr. Paul, many of these, do exemptions in mobility fees in municipalities, do they hinder or do they help in economic development in the cities that they're enacted in? Because I'm weighing and thinking just in my inexpert way that they may not always cause development into the area we provide exemptions. They may just deter exemption, or they may deter development in the area that someone wanted to build. But I don't know, because that's something that you have to. So could you talk a little bit about the economic development and how exemptions work as it relates to a mobility fee?
One of the things that I have found is they're one of a multitude of factors. And I would say the difficulty of going through the development process, the time it takes to go through the development process, the cost of land are probably bigger components than the fee itself. I think, with a very few exceptions of a few places in Central Florida, the fees are that prohibitively expensive where we'll make a decision person to come and do a project or not. They are a factor, but I would say that the ability to get a development through in a timely manner is probably one of the biggest factors that I've seen in all the communities that I work in. And just how welcoming the community is versus, how stringent they are. That's probably the one that I've seen. I've worked in Naples, I've worked in the town of Palm Beach, and very high-end communities that have very high standards, and it takes a while to get through them. I've worked in other communities that are very pro-growth, and it goes through a lot quicker. So I'd say the development process probably has a much bigger impact than the actual fee itself. Just 20 plus years of doing this now.
Yeah, Mr. Manager, did you have any other insight for that? That's a really big picture question, because I tend towards less exemption, more equity across the city and across the types of housing and impact that it does. But I also want to make sure that we're concentrating on areas that have the greatest need.
I would, yes, I think those are very good points that you raised, Commissioner. And I would generally agree with Mr. Paul in terms of the speed, predictability of the development review process is probably more of a driver or a disincentive for economic development than the fee in and of itself. It is important to remember that this fee exists within a larger sort of framework of additional things. So we have wastewater connection fees that the utility charges. We have tree mitigation components. So all of those things add up together. And from a developer standpoint, they're while they might be cutting separate checks for each of those, they're just looking at it as a cost of doing business from the city side, and that all sort of gets summed up at the end. All that said, I would caution thinking about any given fee as a but-for type of scenario. Like, development doesn't say, oh, I would definitely develop here if not for this, this transportation fee. Like, those are typically things that are added on the back end in terms of the as Commissioner Adrian A. Santos mentioned, like, sort of penciling out, but they're not the primary driver, both to develop or not to develop. There are other more complex factors. All that said, as Ms. Lazari has reminded me, recently we had a discussion. In the past, before the city had moved to our TCEA, our concurrency exception area, we were actively denying development permits on the basis of road capacity on Archer Road. So in that sense, everything we're talking about today is an incentive, because we don't want to be in that position where we're denying development because we need to widen Archer Road, and that was largely the drive from the start to where we are today, is to be able to not only facilitate development and infill and redevelopment and everything we're talking about here, but also be able to leverage those funds not for strictly capacity improvements, meaning road widening largely, but also all of the other things that we talk about, at every meeting about multimodal, about making overall transportation investments in the overall system. So this program by in and of itself is in part a development incentive, but those things are all factors within a larger framework of consideration.
Yeah, so from a development standpoint, I would just, as you come back, one thing that would be very important is, regardless of what the mobility fee looks like, is that as early in the process that somebody wants to build, that they know what those fees are, they do. And we've kind of talked about that. Why? Because we don't want them to incur cost and time and resource, and then they see the fee and all of a sudden they're out. So wherever that is in our process, and I don't have that kind of expertise, we would want to have a realistic expectation that staff could provide whatever it is that we end up developing. From an affordability standpoint, if there were exemptions built in, I would concur with some of the things I've heard, that the lower the AMI, the better it is. That's what affordable is. So 120%, I've said many times, is I wouldn't give any exemption to somebody at that point. That doesn't make sense, I don't think. And the closer we can get, if there was an exemption that does come back, the lower that we get to those who are really in poverty and are most need, that's where if there's an exemption to be had, that's where it should be. It's for those units. That would be me. And I would really like to hear between now and the GPC, perhaps the groups that really deal with economic development, like the Chamber, our Realtor Association, and certainly some of our bigger developers, what their thoughts are, just for context. And as long as they'll probably see this discussion and come back to us proactively. I do favor incentives for what we're doing in East Side. I think we're doing a lot. We could probably list a whole bunch. I mentioned that. And we should do those. I'm not sure exemptions are the way to do, but the incentives that we have, monies, wild spaces, park places, the GCRA boundaries themselves, some of our Vision Zero monies and streets monies, we are pouring those into the Northeast 8th Avenue corridor grant fund that we have right now, and 8th and Waldo are ways that we're really spurring folks to want to be where we want them to be, which is in those areas that will then bring more people. So I think that's a good mechanism we're using. So those are my thoughts. Yeah,
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. It sounds like we're all broadly aligned on our overall goals, and I think there's plenty for staff to come and take a look at for how we get there, whether that's broad-based exemptions for specific categories, or a more, as the mayor said, surgical approach to specific things, or exempt categories within a surgical approach, or and then where we want to cut off the affordable housing and AMI. But I think are all aligned in terms of ensuring that we are incentivizing development within, East Gainesville and downtown, that we are, that we want to ensure that affordable housing is incentivized and that we're not getting too much in the way of that, and that we want to move forward more broadly. So I think I would move to direct staff to take into account the comments raised during today's discussion and bring the mobility fee back to the City Commission for further review in April.
Second. We have a motion and a second. I don't see any other lights. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passed unanimously with Commissioners Engel and Duncan Walker absent. All right, thank you all for the attention to this. I think it's very useful. Yes, Commissioner Book.
Suppose this would just be information that the city attorney kind of evaluates and takes a look at those mobility fees as it relates to differences between geographic areas, differences in housing. Is there a disparity in equity issues and defendability issues for us, whatever comes back, and just work with the city manager's office. We're going to need that information, make sure it's our most defendable, objective way, whatever that ends up looking like in a mobility fee. I think that would be I don't think you need a motion, we could make that, but I think that that's part of what we just heard is work together to make sure we understand what we end up coming up with. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Book. So we are going to take a break, stretch our legs, and we'll be back here at 3:35. I'll remind everyone that while this is a meaty item ahead of us, we've got some member comment that I want to get to as well, but we do have a hard stop this afternoon because the planning board, we have to make room for them and let the room switch over and staff switch over a little bit for that. So, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, we have a 2025-910 ImagineGNV comprehensive plan update with the recommendation the General Policy Committee review the received comments on the comprehensive plan update, ImagineGNV, and if necessary, provide guidance to staff on next steps.
Welcome, Mr. Edelman.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Forrest Edelton, Director of the Department of Sustainable Development. And for this particular project, of course, Sustainable Development is the lead sort of coordinating department, but this is a very broad effort that stretches on across all of our departments and divisions, really. My plan today is I will be giving a little bit of an introduction for how did we get here today. But what I would also like to do is go ahead and give a little bit of a brief description of the backup materials, because I think that may be helpful for you all and also the public to know really what we're discussing and what we're looking at here today. So to start off with that, of course, we've got the agenda item and the presentation that you're looking at today. Nothing out of the ordinary there. But we do have included a strike through and underline ImagineGNV. That's the comprehensive plan itself, the comprehensive plan update. We have a strike through from what was presented to you all some months ago and versus what we're working on currently here today. And so what was added into your backup, actually it's important for me to point out as well, was the strike through and underline at the time where we had to have these materials ready for this meeting. So that goes back to the beginning of January. We are continuing to work on these documents, and you'll hear me probably bring that up a couple of times, that this is an iterative process, and a lot of these documents are continuing to be drafted and are really living documents. There is also a timeline and a you'll see as a part of that timeline, it refers to the EAR, or the Evaluation and Appraisal Report. So you'll see a little bit further on in the presentation a discussion about that and the overall timeline, and of course, what is that relation to the required evaluation and appraisal report. There's also an engagement and outreach summary. We'll be going over that today as well. It details a lot of this, of course, engagement and outreach that we have been doing. But again, that outreach continues. We have had some meetings with community groups since this document was uploaded in the backup, and we also will continue to have meetings with the public. Important ones to point out, of course, on February 3rd, hosted by Commissioner Chestnut and along with Gainesville Neighborhood Voices, is a meeting at the Albert Ray Massey Park. And then also on February 11th, hosted by Commissioner Duncan Walker with Gainesville Voices as well, and that will be at the Eastside Recreation Center. So those are going to be a couple of other touch points in community group meeting, events. The last one that we have here included today is a comment response summary. So this is going to be, at least again at the time that this was put into the backup, all of the comments that we have received for our newest iteration of ImagineGNV, the comp plan update. You'll see in our presentation at that time, we had more than 450 comments that have been submitted through that and that staff have been incorporated and moved into our new documents. You'll also notice maybe if you look at it that there are a lot of comments, but the number of different commenters is actually relatively small, at least again at the time of this. The comments today have grown to more than 700 comments, and we actually expect several, probably 100 more as we incorporate more feedback from these community groups, our online website that's interactive, and then feedback that we've gotten directly from citizens. I do want to point out that commissioners have provided comments that you'll see we've had some response to in that document. And also our consultant, EDA, who you all are familiar with, has provided comments there. And we're fortunate enough to have, of course, that third-party set of eyes looking at what we're doing, but also Ms. Onelia Lazari, who was here earlier, is the person on staff with EDA that's providing us that feedback. And if you all do not know, Ms. Lazari has extensive experience not only in the private sector now, but for years and years with the city as a comprehensive planner. So her perspective is invaluable. You also see that we got comments from our city plan board. Most of those came from not most of them, a good number of them came from the plan board chair, which we are incorporating, and then most of them came from a plan board member, Nick Hill. And not only have we incorporated his comments, but we have incorporated Nick Hill. He is now a planner on our staff, so we cannot imagine a better way to really take his feedback and make sure that we move forward with that. I keep threatening that I'm going to get him to come and introduce himself today, but I will not do that. He is, however, in the crowd, and I'm sure you'll be seeing him a lot in the future. So again, these documents are iterative. So I want to just stress that again. These are not final. We are continuing to collect the information to get this guidance and feedback from the community, and of course you all as well. We do still owe you a couple of documents. We want to bring you some crosswalks that you all have asked for. We are working on those, and we have them fairly well developed, but at the time of needing them for backup, we did not feel that they were ready to be discussed directly at this meeting today. So we're going to bring a crosswalk for you that is both our current comp plan and what that means for what we are proposing, and we're going to have a more detailed crosswalk as to what is required by statute and where that is located in this new document. And with that, I am going, and I almost forgot one, and then of course, ultimately our updated data and analysis document that goes to support all of what we are doing. So how did we get here today? You'll forgive me, I'm gonna give this brief introduction that you all are very well versed in and have heard several times, but as always, it is helpful to sort of reiterate the main points, and then if there are new people into this process, that they can get up to speed here as well. So very briefly, our comprehensive plan is the document required by statute where all of our decisions and other planning documents are supposed to be pointing to and aligned with in order to move forward the city's priorities and policies. We are required by state statute to update this document, and we do that typically in every 5 to 7 years. And you'll see by this slide and then our follow-up evaluation and appraisal report slide that the last time that we addressed that was in 2019. So we are coming up on that 7-year window where we need to be updating this document. Again, you'll also see that the last time our planning window that we spoke to directly with our current comp plan goes to 2020. So we are quite behind on that. Do want to point out really quick here that we have today in our current draft of that comp plan what are called elements. Those are roughly, could be thought of as chapters. The language in state statutes uses that word element very specifically, but we have used it, we've changed that to chapters now, and I'll go into that as well as to format. But important for me to point out that even though the new document may not have that as a title, that these elements, the ones required by statute and the ones that the city has in our current comp plan, are being moved forward into the new draft. So that evaluation and appraisal report, again, the last time that we responded to the state or the state requirements was that May 1st, 2019, and here we're coming up on when it is due, that May 1st, 2026. And you'll remember that for our timeline, that date is the one that we work backwards from in what we've proposed so far. That is a very important date, of course, because we again have to respond to the state to say whether or not we think that our comprehensive plan needs to be updated in order to meet changes to statute, and we do. We do need to make those changes. Once we do respond in that way here at May 1st, or at least by May 1st, 2026, a clock starts where we have to have that updated comprehensive plan within a year window. So that is that the EAR overall sort of window for that timeline there. Again, so the early stages of our ImagineGNV engagement. This is talking about the part of the comp plan update prior to the direction from this commission, and of course influenced by state statute, to change the previous iteration that was largely crafted by the consultants HRNA and really was heavily focused or really presented through a lens of being focused on equity, almost exclusively or very, very the overarching lens or viewpoint, if you will. Again, at the direction of this commission, and then in with respect to changes to state statute, that really we were asked to go back and craft it in a way where the comprehensive plan is now a little bit more overarching, that it looks at things through multiple lenses and tries to pull them all together under one plan. This engagement goes all the way back to when the beginning of this process started. Again, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. So the conversation really for what our next plans should be, or the next, that 10-year window, what should the city look like, that really has gone back all the way to the beginning of this. And I won't go through each line here, but you can see we've had digital media outreach, we've had public meetings, we have had our interactive website for years now. We've had listening sessions. We've done conversations in a box that incorporated community members directly to give us feedback, and have moved a lot of different drafts forward as well. So you heard me talk very briefly earlier about what does it look like now. So we have tried to really hold with this idea that we started with to make this an approachable document, not simply a document that planners would look at or policy wonks only or exclusively. We tried to make this something that was approachable. So breaking it into these chapters that may be something that is a little bit more recognizable. And you'll see the titles here, how we work, Gainesville today or our city government are a little bit more approachable than some of those element titles that the state statute points out. Now, that being said, again, we do still have those required elements in here. This is the beginnings of one of those crosswalks. So we're trying to tell you here on this slide, here's the chapter, and here's where you may be able to find, or you will be able to find, those statute required elements within these chapters. Also important to point out that there are points or parts of each one of these chapters that may be in addition to what is required by state statute or those elements. So they are not directly correlated with each other. They are sort of the elements plus in some cases, or they may even overlap. You'll see for the how we build, for example, there are 3 different elements all tied into our one chapter. And to continue to sort of describe that newer format, and this will also come up in a larger policy question that we will have for you regarding the narrative specifically. But what we tried to do for each of these chapters is really have those narratives that create, again, that more approachable of here's why the city got to making these policies that you are about to read further in whichever chapter these are. And again, the idea there is that it is more approachable. If you can start the story by telling the story of the city, or why did the city as an organization get to some of these policy decisions, then perhaps we can make that more open to the public and others that are not typically used to working with comprehensive plans. We do try to point out the progress to build on, the things that we've done well as a city and things that we would like to continue on, and then really explain why is this important and why are we looking at it at all. Now, we all also have gone back and reformatted this, again, at the direction of the city to bring it in line a little bit more with that traditional format. There were a variety of reasons to do this, and we took that direction to heart, of course, and went back and added these so that they are using the phrases, the goals, the objectives, and policies, which again is that more traditional comprehensive plan format. So with that as a basic intro, I will turn it over to staff to go through the next set of slides here, where we're going to give you some updates on where we are currently and the engagement efforts that we've undergone.
Very good. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Allison Pager. I'm a planner with Sustainable Development. I'm here to talk about how we've engaged with our community. So this next section will explore our more recent community engagement efforts and outreach efforts. So just wanted to emphasize this has really been an all hands on deck effort involving coordination with multiple people, so wanted to extend thanks to those chapter leads, government affairs and community relations. Shout out to Jamal for all of his help. The Community First program leads and other city employees and communications for all their help with this.
So I'll pause you for just a moment and give kudos to Ms. Pager. She was I was with her at the Ridgeview neighborhood meeting this past week, and there were probably 30 people in the room, and this was not the only thing we were talking about. There were other things going on, but she was out there to directly discuss this. So,
thank you. Yeah, that was a great meeting.
Yeah.
So to start, this is kind of a breakdown of this recent effort and how that has kind of played out, and then the action items that we see from that. So we kind of took this on as a multi-pronged approach. So a key part was how can we get the word out as fast as we can due to our timeline? How can we involve our neighbors directly, and how can we involve these important community groups and organizations and get their valuable feedback? So of course the usual communication methods are important: phone calls, emails, one-on-one meetings, really starting that contact and getting the information out and coordinating on staff having the opportunity to attend events and attend meetings as these groups become interested. With that, our website's a major tool for getting information out there as well. And the communications team has been really helpful with graphics, handouts, and the weekly newsletter coordination. So kind of starting all this out is, reaching out by email. We sent a little over 50 emails out to our different community groups and organizations and those that have expressed interest back in December to start the conversation and let them know, staff is here and we would love to attend one of your meetings if there's interest there. Bring information about the comp plan, break it down, make it more approachable and understandable. And off of that, it leads into more meetings that we're able to have. So we appreciate those groups for opening up their meetings to us. And some other efforts here as well, flyer distribution, and a couple more that we'll get more in depth on the next few slides. But as Forrest mentioned, this is ongoing. So a lot of the information that's on these slides and in your summary and the backup, even like 2 days after we submitted it, already has increasing numbers. So we're really excited to see that and want to continue doing that. So for our website, this is part of we have a core team that's kind of dedicated to keeping the ImagineGNV page of the city website constantly updated. So we do multiple weekly check-ins on that. We keep all of our information updated. So some visuals for what's on the website. Of course, we have our 2 interactive tools where when we go out to these meetings, we're encouraging everyone to go to this website and leave comments directly on the draft, get our contact information, email us, call us, set up a meeting, come see us at the Thomas Center and give us your feedback verbally. And then at the very bottom of the page, we keep an updated chart of not only the public meetings, but also the community meetings and community events that we'll be at, so people can plan to meet us out in the community, because not everyone loves coming to public meetings like we do. So really just getting the word out about where people can see us and interact with us that fits with their schedule. And we'll continue keeping that updated as we get more confirmations of these community events and meetings. So leading right into what these meetings have looked like, the resulting action that comes from all this coordination are these meetings. So again, we're very thankful and appreciative to the groups and organizations that have made the space and the time to have us. And these have also been essential for distributing our handouts and our information. I've had the opportunity to attend many of these, so I know that there's been a lot of great conversations and receiving feedback at them from our neighbors and community members. As a planner, it's fun because I get to talk about things that I think are fun with them. As a public servant, it's rewarding because you're getting out there and you're really widening people's minds to how the city works and how important this document is to making that happen, which is not really common knowledge, so it's important to get that out there. Just a couple of examples for where we've been in the past month. This week and last week and the week before, we've had some meetings with the Porters neighborhood, University Park Neighborhood Association, Ridgeview. We've gone to events like the Celebrating Peace event in December. We've had a lot of good one-on-one meetings as well with groups like EDA and other individuals that take the time and the effort to compile this really good feedback and want to meet one-on-one with us to go through policy by policy and share their thoughts. And of course, with all of this, the planners over at the Thomas Center are always available for people that come in any day of the week, so we get countless feedback that way as well. Handout dispersal. So we have really great flyers and timelines that we've been handing out. Just some numbers that have been compiled from all that up until I think this number was from the second week of January. We've gotten out about 570 of the trifolds. There's some available on the stands in here as well. We've made efforts to get them to a lot of our public buildings that are most accessible around the city. So there's always stacks around there. And they're also shared digitally. We've sent them out to a lot of people as well. And a lot of people have actually come to us and asked to take a stack with them and take them to their meetings and their groups. So it's really helping getting the word out. And shout out to the team that helps fold them, because I didn't realize how fun it was to fold trifolds, especially several hundred of them. So finally, for the public meetings, of course, these are a key part of the process, so we want to make sure we're keeping everyone updated when we'll be at a public meeting, how people can access them, watch them, and see what happened at them later on. along with that, staff is always attending these as well. Obviously for the ones where we have the item on it, but also ones where it's just being discussed. We want to make sure we're there for the public feedback and we note it down and we're able to take that in as we go back and work on the comp plan. And this is also, of course, great opportunities to share the handouts as well. And yeah, so we're going to continue working on all of this, but for anyone tuning in, if anyone is interested in having us come to your group, please feel free to reach out. Again, my name is Allison, and I'm over at the Thomas Center, and you can reach out anytime, and we're happy to arrange that and get the word out.
Let me pause here for just a second. Commissioner Book.
Just a very brief comment, Ms. Pager, I appreciate it because like you, Mr. Mayor, we had the big event at MLK. There was like, I don't know, 20 or more nonprofit organizations and community organizations. So merely hitting those tables, I know the flyers went out to those 20 organizations. Whether they responded or not, I don't know, but they knew why they were being given the information. So they had the capability, and the leverage of those is pretty vast. Those related. So I thought that was impressive, and I also have seen the staff kind of into full court press trying to put stuff. Commissioner Wiltz, I know you had a bunch of brochures in your pocket. You were cajoling people to take them, and just a couple of things we've overlapped in. So I think we're doing the right thing to get, at least attempt to get as much information on a document that most people just are not going to go through. So, but we need it. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Willits.
I'm going to brag as well. I had the opportunity, the honor to watch Ms. Pager and Mr. Rabinovich and Mr. Chan at work Monday night on a cold holiday, out working with a community group, and got to observe them. And I was very impressed of how much listening they did, and that they did not try to guide any part of the almost frustratingly so. They listened and nodded and wrote down and wrote copious notes to inform, us and the plan board and everybody else. So I was just very, very impressed. So Mr. Edelton, Mr. Manager, thank you for the work they did, and thank you to at least what I got to see, Ms. Pager and Mr. Rabinovich and Mr. Chan. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Willis. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to pass it over to Nate.
Speaking of Mr. Chan, there you go.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Nate Chan, Planner for Sustainable Development. So I'm very thankful for Allison for going through all of the engagement that she's been working through, sending emails, attending meetings, scheduling things, and getting the word out physically, as well as through all of our different means that we're trying to hit. So I am heading up the last portion, which is going over some of the feedback that we've gotten so far and where that leads us into the next phase of the timeline. So just getting right into it, Director Edelton had mentioned that we have in your backup over 450 written comments that have been received. Currently in our working spreadsheet, we have over 700, and there are still many documents and emails that we're getting to input into the spreadsheet as well. So that is currently being worked through. And we've gotten comments, as Allison had mentioned, online on Conveo, on our city's website, through advisory board members like Nick Hill, fellow commissioners, and other groups and organizations. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more. Our team is manually inputting those comments into that spreadsheet and providing a response where we can, and I'll get into what that looks like. So this is a very complicated slide, but all to say that our team is undertaking a great effort to create a repository of every piece of feedback that we've gotten on the plan. So just starting from the top, the first sort of box is just going over our redraft last year, transitioning the plan into a traditional format. So that's with the goals, objectives, and policies. We've gone through a very iterative drafting process with other departments and internally, going through into the commission meetings that we had in November and December, where we established the timeline that you all are and we're all operating off of. We've received a lot of feedback on that and are gathering that, absorbing, doing research, and that brings us here to today. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of the themes that we've seen in the feedback that we've received. So just going through the boxes here. So the top one, and honestly the greatest one that I'm appreciative of, because it's so easy to change, are the formatting and grammar changes. So things like rewording a policy or adding a period or things like that. We're cataloging those, but those are really simple things for us to change. And I'm glad, because it's like we have many editors on a document looking at it. So hopefully it is something that's easy to read and is consistent across the board. Something that Forrest had mentioned earlier are the narratives. So we have heard from the commission and community members that the narrative portions of the document are helpful context. So we do plan to keep those. So where they're located and what they contain and how they're worded, those are things that were being discussed, and would absolutely love you all to raise feedback as you already have. So the narratives are a portion that we're looking at. The indicators, so we've also heard that so indicators, just so you're aware, they are not a required component for comprehensive plans. They are something that were added as part of the original consulting work that we did on the comp plan. So we heard that, they might be confusing in the current plan because they're not necessarily a requirement. We are leaning towards moving these to another document, whether that's the data analysis or another document entirely, but we feel that they are good nuggets of information and data that can be pulled on when asked. These bottom three here I'll go through as well. So we've also heard some interest and disinterest in future land use changes. So these are changes and recommendations to changing density or height or allowable uses. So we've heard interests on both sides of the realm, some who are interested in changes like that, and others that are not interested in that type of work. We did not, as part of the initial steps of the comprehensive plan update, we had not looked at any future land use changes or changes to the categories like that, but understand that you as a commission are interested in changes to certain areas. So that's like with the South Main and the Southwest Gainesville land use and rezoning efforts that are underway. They do require a greater deal of time and attention that we previously hadn't looked at before, but that is one thing that we have heard as well. Down here, missing policies in yellow. Thankful again that the commission and community members have highlighted policies that are in our current comprehensive plan might be missing. So we're doing, as Forrest had mentioned, the crosswalk document to see what has in our existing comp plan and what has been carried over or is missing. But as we see the ones that are missing, we're just going ahead and adding those back into the plan. Lastly, some new ideas are being brought up, which is excellent. It's sort of inevitable when you ask, what's your biggest interest or concern about Gainesville? What do you love? What do you not love? So some things that we've heard overall are, stronger area planning was mentioned. So, focusing on downtown or focusing on certain areas of the city. Stormwater, I think, has been mentioned as well as being a sort of point as part of the development process. To look at trails and greenways, I think were mentioned were mentioned in a couple of portions of our document. Historic preservation was also mentioned as well. So these new ideas are things that our team is taking a closer look at and seeing where we can align, but definitely want to open the floor to you all at the end of this discussion to see what your feelings are towards those. So here's just the comment and response summary. There's a screenshot just with Nick Hill's comments, but I promise you and assure you that we have comments from many other folks. I would also like to mention as part of this comment summary that these are just the written comments that we've received. So our team is also, as Allison had mentioned, taking physical notes, putting that into the spreadsheet, and then having a staff response. That is going to be a separate tab at a later date. But as the community meetings and things that we're going and attending to are sort of rolling, that's unfortunately not in your backup today, but we are adding it to the next iteration of the spreadsheet. All right, well, I'll wrap us up with the next steps of the comp plan update, just looking at the timeline and what to expect next. So today we're January 22nd. Later today, we have a city plan board meeting where the only item on the agenda is the comprehensive plan update. So we do plan to spend a considerable amount of time at that plan board meeting talking through every chapter in great detail. And hopefully it sparks some ideas and get some good feedback from the board members on the plan as it is, and as well as any community members and anyone that's interested in the comprehensive plan update. So that is later today. We do not have the the list of the community meetings that we're going to on this timeline, but they are more frequently updated on the city's website through that table. So those are on there. If we put them on here, it's probably too many to list where, when, and how to engage. So that's on the city's website. Beyond that, the next city plan board meeting is February 19th, where we plan to talk more about the comprehensive plan. And then I think that Forrest had mentioned just the later deadline in May of the evaluation, the state notification letter, essentially, to say that we are making changes to our comprehensive plan. That is just due in May. With that, that's the end of our presentation. Definitely welcome your feedback on the plan as it is, any of the comments that you've seen, and the feedback that others have given. That is all. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so I don't see any lights up front. All right, Commissioner Eastman. There you go.
So, if I can get some so can we go back to the calendar? So, as it stands now, this is the last time the city commission would be reviewing the ImagineGNV draft, right? So you have a markup of really kind of what's the term you put, like kind of grammar changes that were in there. And then when I look through the backup, you have a number of policy or comment entered. There's anything that's sort of above grammar changes or kind of clear missing things that needed to be in there. And so the idea is we're discussing it today, and then by March 5th, so this is the last time we're talking about it, before March 5th, when it will come back to us in a final reading, correct?
No, that's not a final reading, that's
Or first
reading.
reading.
Yeah.
But it will be, there'll be first reading. So there could be some markups to it, but at that point we have to send it to the state. So that same day we submit it to the state to get back to us in April, review everything that's come back to the state, and then submit it in May. Is that correct? So we can't read it on first reading, edit it, and then send it to the state on second reading. That's it. Like it's gotta be ready at the end of that meeting for submittal. Am I understanding right?
That's right.
Okay. And so the idea here is that everything that the 450 comments that are in the backup, we would go through this afternoon and review that in terms of integration and non-integration. Is that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Something that didn't take up a box on the the feedback that we've received is just the comments on the timeline, because we have been distributing that as well. Something that we've heard consistently from groups that have been engaged or are engaging now is that it does feel a little bit constrained in terms of how to provide feedback. Just throwing that out there too.
Okay. Because I'll say I'll let the city manager speak to it, but it's I do think we need to talk about the timeline, because it's what we saw from our mobility plan coming forward is that even menial changes to it, the state kicked back because SB 180 is causing all kinds of weird hiccups into it. That there's a very good chance that, and we have a glitch bill right now for Senate Bill 180 that will theoretically, if we're lucky, knock on wood, come on July 1st. We're submitting this in May 1st. Is this the right way to go about doing this? Do we need another chance to have this conversation about all of this? I think there's still a significant amount of work that we need to put into the document to get it to a point where I would feel comfortable submitting it to the state and saying this is something that we will live with for the next 20, 30 years, or I guess the next 10 years, but our current comp plan has been living with us for 20, 30 years, right? Like, it's been a long time. And I guess I'll let the city manager kind of speak to whatever he would like to speak to, because he hit his button. If you would like to add anything to that.
All right, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe to kind of expedite this part of the discussion relative to the timeline, what I would suggest would be potentially converting the March date as a first reading for another, either use part of the regular meeting or perhaps put it on to the GPC to come back, similar to what we talked about with the mobility plan, to give staff time to complete the engagement, because we are still, as Ms. Pager indicated, we still have a couple of community groups that I think are interested in submitting feedback. We, I think, as sort of leadership, need to sit down and really kind of comb through the comments and be able to reconcile things and come back to you all with a completed, cleaned up, this is our recommendation. So I think having that opportunity to touch base again in March, what that'll mean is that we'll have to sometime draft a letter to the state indicating that, you know, we are going to initiate the year process, which gives us a year. I don't want to take a year. I think we can achieve everything we're trying to do with maybe 1 or 2 additional months and still be able to meet a tight timeline, but without unnecessarily keeping the process too tight, for whether it's for community groups or whether it's to make sure the attorney's office has a full review of the plan as well.
So you're saying that in March, we would just submit something to the state that says that we are going to have that we are going to do our year process, but we don't actually have to submit to them the language at that time.
We don't. I mean, all we would need to do prior to that May date would be to submit a letter to the state indicating that, you know, as Mr. Edelton indicated, we do have updates to the comprehensive plan related to state law. And then once the state receives that and certifies it, then we have a year to do that, essentially. So again, we don't need a year to do that, because obviously we've been under this comprehensive plan process for a long time. But it would give us like 1 or 2 extra months to be able to finish everything, come back to you all, and to be able to have enough time to be able to complete the work.
Okay, because what I would like to see at some point is similar to what we saw in the last one, or sort of how what policies are we bringing forward? Because I'll say that there's I'd say kind of a 7th box here that is, it seems like there are a lot of new policies that are being put into this that I'm reading through, and I'm saying, okay, well, new programs, new sometimes with funding associated with them that are put into ImagineGNV that are not in our current comp plan, or not currently within our city. And saying, well, how are we reviewing these? Is this something that we actually want to implement? Where is the funding for this new program coming from? And so, looking at those, if we think it's a good idea to continue forward, if not, pulling it out, but having a chance to review that, reviewing some of the comments that we brought forward. There's a number of, and I can go into some of the feedback that I've given to this, though that may be less important if we're, if we're going to be going through a full EA, if we're going to be reviewing it and then coming forward in May, spending the next few months on that. But the making sure that there's a staff review of these different policies. What are the pros and cons of it, of the different policies that are going forward? What makes sense to integrate? What does not make sense to integrate? And then allowing that to come back to the commission with everyone's feedback and thoughts, and having our professional staff take a look at each one of those things. And that's not what I've seen so far from it. I can't, I'm happy to go through the thousands of word of documents that I've submitted to staff on the comp plan, but I think I would bore my fellow commissioners to tears up here, and it's 4:15 now. So yeah, what's that?
We'd walk out.
Yeah, so there'd be no more quorum. There'd be no quorum here anymore. I want to make sure before we submit this to the state, I just want to feel really comfortable with this document. I want to make it sure that it's a document that will get approved by the state, that does not bind us into future decades to policies that we haven't fully vetted, and that it makes sense for where we are in 2025. So if we can do that through the process that you said, Mr. Manager, that makes sense to me. And I might swing back around and go on my little on a little bit of a buzz on some of the things I put forward, but I'll let my fellow commissioners speak on this first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, originally I was like, let's get this absolutely done, before, like, let's get it done. But part of my understanding is that we were not fully peeling the onion and going to all the layers of new ideas, big changes to future land use, which I know there's been some suggestion by people in individual groups. Yes, this is the time to do it. My understanding was more that we would only this is more so, a statutory, we have to get it done every 7 years, and that this provided an opportunity for some formatting, some cleanup, the addition of narratives, which I like the idea of. I know that I don't want to demand perfection out of them because probably even all 7 of us or even 4 of us can't agree exactly to a narrative, which I think is part of the issue. I'm reading through the comments. It's hard for everyone to agree. But I think I'm getting to the point where I can support the idea of not going, extending it. Now, whether we extend it a full year or is it just we have a couple months, I'm interested in if a fixed bill on Senate Bill 180, if it is going to be beneficial for us to know what comes out of that, so that whatever we have planned will pass muster, then that extra time obviously is necessary. The idea of future land use, and I worry that this part of the will further delays. Like, is the intent to actually peel back and say, yeah, let's talk about potentially on the South Main and Southwest area the potential to add transect zones and all that. And I just don't know if now is the time to do it to coincide with, with this update, which was really just supposed to be the EAR every 7 years. Incorporate what we have changed. We know that we have changed, that they need to see it in one document. But so I'm hearing from the community there is a lot of interest in some of the future land use, right? Some of it to look at it and say, let's re-envision. But I didn't think this was when we were going to do it, when we were going to be opening up that particular can of worms. And so I'm open to extending it. But if we are opening the can of worm of all these potential future land use, and let's really re-envision where we live, where we do business, all of that, then I don't want to only add a couple months. Then I want to add a full year. So that's and I don't know between Commissioner Eastman what you're potentially thinking or describing versus what we're hearing from some of the community versus what staff is hearing and kind of where we're at, because I think right now it's confusing me, like, what does staff think? What does community think? What do we think? Because it could be, oh no, let's get it done. Let's get it done with limited. Let's get it done with jamming in as much as possible, but it's not perfect. Let's add a couple months, but we're still jamming in, let's say, future land use, some of that. Or is it like a full year, and let's take the time and let's talk to the community and really envision the next X number of years on land use. So that's not one question, though. So if you want to provide little thoughts, Director Ellison.
I wouldn't provide too much context.
Yeah.
Because we still have other lights up here, so.
Or I'm at your direction, Mr. Mayor.
Let's go through a couple more lights, and then we'll come to you, and then we'll go to the public, and then we'll come back up. All right, Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I think, first of all, it's very refreshing to know that we have 450 comments. And I think you said a total of 700.
650, those are Brian.
I know. I know. But it shows the interest, the level of interest from the community. So I want to be sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Commissioner Willetts. So you're considering extending beyond May, not submitting in May? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I think there's some conversation, to figure out what the glitch bill first. There's a little more, but are we opening the full thing, or is it just we need a little more time? Is it undercooked, or do we literally not have the right ingredients in it? Because one of those is maybe we need a year. One of them is maybe we need 2 months, so.
But it seems to me if we have 700 comments, it means that we probably need to look at the whole, everything. That's the way I'm seeing it. So we may just need to just take a total look at the document. Because I don't think we're going to get this level of feedback again if we rush the process. So that's where I am. So I would be for extension and thank the 700 people who have responded. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chestnut. Do we know about how many people it actually is? I mean, I know we know how many comments it is, but.
Yeah, that's not people, that's
That's
comments, yeah.
comments.
Okay, so I'll get to you in just a second, Commissioner Eastman. I want to add a couple thoughts. So we should, can we back to the timeline? Just to, my greatest concern is what ends up happening with the glitch bill at this point. So we'll need to extend until at least into July. If we extend into July, then we're talking about budget season, and our heads need to be on budget, and because that is always a challenge, and we're honestly not going to give the right headspace to doing this in June. By the way, we have a recess in June, and do budget all at the same time. The budget must be accomplished. There's no question about that. So I would prefer to say that we probably should file for the EAR full year extension with the intent of finishing not at some distant point, but at a real timeline. I'd like for us to come back at the next meeting with a real timeline that gives us real deadlines that we can agree to. Because we will, if we don't put deadlines on it, we'll have the same conversation next summer. And we have done that for years at this point. The community deserves a finish line on this. I would like that finish line to be after the budget has been passed, and we look at a fixed point in the fall where we can say, yes, this is what we have talked it through. We've had at that point 1,217 comments or whatever it is, and we are prepared to say this is it. Let's move forward. Because if we extend indefinitely, we will extend indefinitely.
So maybe the final meeting in December.
Right, I'd like to do it a little bit earlier, but yeah, not too much.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily I think we're getting feedback. I don't think we necessarily need a date set. Understanding that the desire from the commission is to have this approved certainly by the end of the calendar year, ideally by probably early fall, around that time after budget. I think most of the work is going to be is still going to happen in the next month or two.
I think you're right.
And we're really going to be talking about once we get to that end, it's going to be ideally a victory lap. Where everybody's seen it. Nobody wants to talk about a comprehensive plan ever again. And it's just we're just approving it to send it to the state. The other thing I was going to mention is I think I can probably confidently speak for staff. To Commissioner Willard's point, I would strongly recommend that the commission not get into map amendments, not talk about the land use map, not talk about
separate issue.
Particularly I think whether it's map amendments or whether it's we should change the density on this land use or that land use, that is going to be another sort of level of analysis that we would have to do with the state in order to show impact and if that's the desire of the commission, let us finish this process. And then, as you all know, we have two significant land use and zoning areas that we're working on, the southwest area and the South Main Street area. And so I don't want to like cross the streams, particularly with those issues. If there are very discrete things that the commission is interested in terms of the land use categories with uses or things that are not going to like trip a giant extra layer of analysis, then those are things I think that staff could potentially work with. But in terms of touching the map or changing a lot of densities, like, please don't. A year is not enough time to be able to tackle that in addition to everything else.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. I appreciate all the clarification on the process and all that. That to me is the most important thing is just that we can get through, that we get through all this. I think to Commissioner Willis, you kind of mentioned the being able to approve sort of a kind of in a box, like, we're updating the comp plan and we're just doing this quick, passage of things. And I think that the horses very much left the barn on ImagineGNV on that. I mean, when you read through this, I was surprised by kind of the ambition of ImagineGNV. I'm not entirely sure where it all came from. I think because it's been 5 years of this, and we've hired outside consultants. 6 years, we've hired outside consultants. There's been like it's almost become it's like a snowball that has sort of grown over time. And for me, one of the things I've tried to do with my amendments is to break down the ambition of it in a way and to say, okay, well, is this a program that we actually want to put in our comp plan, which is kind of like our constitution of our land use? Is this something we want in here, or does this make more sense to just put into a land development code amendment that we could then alter at the commission level, as opposed to, remember, all this is state. So anything we want to change, we have to send it back to the state for approval afterward. And to me, I would rather send less things to the state than more things to the state, just on a personal level. So it's, I think it is already a very ambitious document that is just doing a lot of different things. And I think it should probably do less things as it relates to the future. So like future land use changes, they haven't really touched much of it. There may be a change here or there, or maybe a missing policy here or there. Like the gated communities is something that you mentioned from before. But you guys, the planning department, I think, has really tried to just keep this kind of on the straight and narrow on that. I am not opposed to looking at some of our, we have things like floor area ratios in some of our old land use categories. We have things like, minimum densities that may or may not be best practices now. I don't know if staff is opposed to kind of just doing cleanup language as it relates to some old ideas from past generations of planning. But I think that is a good use of an EAR process, is to say, what is not best practices anymore in urban planning? And let's just use, because what other opportunity do you have to just kind of, get the junk out of old ordinances that don't make a whole lot of sense? I think that is a good thing that we can do, but I think we need to bring it down at the same time as it relates to new ideas. A lot of the stuff that I've tried to put forward is more just visioning type things, or even the stuff that is requirements within the current ImagineGNV. Put that down to more visioning. The city should look at doing this. The city should consider that. Things like, I've met with Gail in Public Works about doing more regional stormwater planning, which is something that they've already talked about doing, that's saying cities should really consider, more regionalized stormwater planning, or putting trails and parks along our stormwater facilities, like we've done with Sweetwater and with Depot Park and some other areas that are not, they're not requirements. They're just, this is more visioning for the city. And I think that's where we want our comp plan at the end of all of this, is more, this is a vision. There are some strict requirements that state law requires of us. There are some things that we are solid about. We want this above our land development code, and we want this above everything in our ordinances, because we feel very strongly as a city that this needs to be there. But and that's when you put it in. It's like a constitution, and that's where I would like for us to get by the end of it. That's not where we currently are. At least in the most updated draft, there's still requirements of like a welcome back programs in the housing portion. There's still requirements within the how we work portion about how we interact with contractors that is not current practices within the city. And I'm uncomfortable. I am not comfortable putting any of this stuff forward. I'm not sure how much all this stuff is vetted. And I want to make sure it's been vetted before we send it to the state. So giving us a little bit more breathing room to figure all of that out is very important to me before we send it forward. So to answer your question about just ambition and what we're approving, I think we're already approving a complete rewrite of our entire comp plan. And so it's, we got, now at this point, we just got to make sure that it's done right and done well and something that we can live with for the next, decade or two. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Book.
Yeah, thanks. So I may be one of the outliers here in that I think we try and adhere as much to the timelines as possible, and that there's really a number of rationale for that. And I am totally comfortable with if at 30 days or 60 days, the manager says we're coming back essentially in a GPC format, getting yet another crack to look at things. That's where we should be. But remember, this is 7 years old, and just this iteration of the commission has been working on this. It first was mentioned right when we came on in 2023. So if we are unable to get something done that puts it in a standardized format in that amount of time, I don't think that speaks well for us. And it doesn't help staff, because what happens every time you delay essentially a big initiative is you get staff turnover, you get staff change, you get staff fatigue, and they're not concentrating. I think you alluded to this, Mr. Mayor. So when we hit budget season, everybody's mind will not be back on this. And when we come back in November, right after October with a new budget, what happens with the staff is now they have to re-engage with this. I'm not making a statement on behalf of staff. I would think, Mr. Manager, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that they also want to get it done. We recognize that we can't open up every specific subsection right now, because that would be well over a year or 2 years of work. That would almost be like starting over. This is putting it in a format, I think you and I made that motion last year or something. Getting it in a format that we know the state will be able to understand it. It does not engender gigantic changes in policy at the moment. All of those would deal with our other overlapping documents. And we need to get that complete. 30 or 60 days, not a problem. When you get past that, we'll be restarting it again, and you will be reopening the document. So I am strongly in favor of completing it, and completing it hopefully in front of the fall, not in the fall. And before we hit the budget season in July, that still extends us 2 months right there if we do that. Staff is fully engaged right now in it. I think that their minds are on it right now, and they probably have a much better capability to respond to us right now. Why? Because they're digging in. That will not be the case if we were sitting in 2027. They have to, you have new staff and new people. So I think if we end up with a 30 or 60-day extension, that's fine. Beyond that, I know I wouldn't support it, because you're talking about a much bigger difference. And it also costs time and resource, and that's also money. The big picture pieces, I think, that are very good is there's some remarks that we've had here. A definition, a glossary, and hyperlinks are all good, and you've already mentioned that. We're going to need that. It's terminology heavy, but I think we're already well past starting that process. So that's key. So people read things, and they may not be as well versed. To have the ability to go to a hyperlink or a definition that's vetted is absolutely essential. So we're all speaking the same language. Indicators, if you were to tailor those back, we did have too many, but we've talked about that. Get ones that we already have documents available, research available, so that we're not creating additional work. Those are the indicators I think you should stick with. And our staff already knows what they are, and we've talked about them. Myself, I don't know how you all feel, but I'm in favor of essentially eliminating non-required information for the comp plan. The more you put in, the more it has to be evaluated, assessed, and vetted. And so I'm in favor of keeping it as standardized format as possible. That's just a comment, and the non-required elements, I guess, should probably not be there. Continue the public engagement. I think it's in a tight time frame. It's been fantastic. And lastly, Mr. Manager, it appears that some of our city staff have also weighed in outside your specific area. And where that's the case, I think that's fantastic. I was just looking through the comments, and it may be a piece. You're talking about people who know the inner workings of the city. So to the extent that we've already kicked it out internally to the city, to the county, I'm talking about the actual government workers, we should do that if we haven't done it already, and encourage them to get in, because they know what it should look like, probably at a much better practical level than us. So those are my comments. Stick as close to the timeline as possible, and this document will be solid. I think, and it will pass muster at the state level. Those have been my thoughts.
All right, thank you, Mr. Book. Mr. Edelton, do you want to add some context and color
Please,
here?
thank you. Thank you. But yes, several good points across the dais there to hopefully I can touch on and add a little bit more context to it. So yes, for staff, we're kind of at this moment in the process still trying to walk that line of listening while giving our professional feedback. Commissioner Willits, you said it pretty well, that it's almost frustrating at times how much we're still listening rather than giving back our direct feedback on it. We find on other items from the staff side, once we start providing direct recommendations, the participation goes down. It feels like there's no longer a process for people to be involved in. So we're trying to walk that line at this moment in time from staff. You all also have brought up there is definitely that fourth floor level of review that needs to be done for these documents as they are today. So that either the future land use changes, are those going to be big overarching policy changes that may require a lot more time, effort, resources? Those are things that we can eventually here in according to the timeline that we go forward with, provide that feedback on. We'll also be able to look at them from the resource expenditure or where money may be coming from for different programs. If that language is in the draft today, well, of course, what our recommendation is going to be is to remove a lot of that and put that more into implementation documents. That goes for the indicators as well. There are still some indicators that are in the current draft, but what we're going forward with as staff to recommend is taking those out and putting them in an implementation document. That's something that, of course, can be worked, changed more often, more frequently, and be more directly affected or effective with our programs. The narratives, that is something that we've heard different discussion both at the dais and from the public, whether to even keep them at all or not. So that's actually something we may be able to get a little bit of direction from you all here, either to us as staff or even asking for our plan board to take a look at later on tonight and then for their meetings as well. We also have to take a look at it in terms of SB 180. Unfortunately, as staff, we're in the position of trying to determine now what is burdensome. That is the word, the operative word in the state statute. So we can take a look at what we've received so far, and if we as staff are able to, point at it and say, this is something that could be articulated as burdensome, well, we're going to have to take a really hard look at it and take a really hard look at whether or not we keep it in there at this point in time. So that's really sort of where we are currently, again, at this point in the process, and continue to look forward to hearing some more feedback and trying to put some of these new ideas or even suggestions for some larger changes for future land use or uses or things like that in a context or in a framework where we're able as staff to come back and give that direct recommendation.
Very good. Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, let's go to public comment, and then we'll come back up here to give some direction to staff.
Kim Tanzer.
Welcome, Ms. Tanzer.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you for your time and for taking comments seriously and trying to get this right. I'm encouraged that it seems you're willing to extend the timeline at least a bit, if not much, much longer. And I think, somewhere between now and next December, there's a happy medium there. And what I'm hearing is that for the most part, you would like to edit things out and simplify, and I think that's a great way to go. I would like to use my remaining 2 minutes to try to do a 45-minute lecture, and I'm happy to do it for you or anyone else. I did this lecture for the retired faculty of Florida in October, and the title of the lecture is City of Networks. And I started by talking about the size of Gainesville at the same scale compared to other cities. So on the left is Gainesville, and right there's a little bar, a scale bar, which it goes from University Avenue and 13th Street to the president's house. It's about a mile. I did that same scale bar here in Paris, and these maps are essentially the same size. So what you can see is that Gainesville, our little old Gainesville, is the same geographic size as Paris. And if you've been there, you know that you would never consider walking from one side of Paris to the other. I also compared Washington and New York, but closer to home is Savannah. So on the right here is Savannah, and if you've been to Savannah, the only place that you have ever been, unless you're whatever, crazy, is this area, which is the original Savannah. That's about the size of the duck pond and downtown. So I think the real tension that I'm hoping we can at least uncover in this process is, what does Gainesville really look like? 25 years ago, I advocated for making everything central to the city, making downtown the center. I have now come to understand that that is not possible. That ship sailed about 50 years ago, probably, because of cars, because of all kinds of things that maybe we don't like or whatever. But older people need cars, families with kids need cars. I ride a bike, I commuted on a bike, but you can't do that all the time everywhere. This was my last slide, and this is a still life. And the way I envision Gainesville now is like this painting. So if you imagine this as a map of Gainesville and all of these different objects as different centers in Gainesville, I think we would have a better shot at making a good Gainesville if we valued all of them and tried to make them unique and help people to walk or bike to those centers rather than everybody going downtown, which is just never going to work. That's tough. I don't know if we can get there, but I would like to open that as a question, and if we have a few more months to think about it that way. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Robert Mounts.
Welcome, Mr. Mounts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Robert Mounts, here again on behalf of the UPNA. And I want to thank Mr. Edelston for meeting with the UPNA board this last week, and we had an excellent discussion about some of these issues, and we appreciate the visit. For the comprehensive plan, and considering that my 3 points that I've already submitted in writing, it seems to me that one that's most appropriate in the comprehensive plan is some recognition that student housing is unique to Gainesville with the University of Florida and is adjacent to the large residential neighborhoods. Same with the Blount Center and downtown. The big housing projects are all still considered multi-family housing, and yet they put tremendous stress on the homes around them that are mostly occupied by families. Sadly, the profit incentive for developers still is to build more of the same, not better quality residences, condominiums for older people and professional staff and so forth. The other 2 points may be, like Commissioner Eastman mentioned, more appropriate for the Land Development Code. Just as we said last week, there's an compelling need to me for much better notice of any major changes in development issues, and certainly major development projects. And what the system we've had now and labored with now is extremely developer friendly. The public gets to know by accident. Like today, I just got notice that tonight the plan board is going to consider this issue. Great. I can't be there. This last thing is one that Mr. Edelston actually said the planning staff is really not very fond of, and that's the plan development PD process, where you create major exceptions to the laid out plan that everybody agreed to as to the limits on height, density, and all of this. If a developer comes in and says, well, that just won't work if we can't do all of this, and you give to them too often. And this is terribly frustrating, I think, for planners, and certainly has caused a patchwork in our community of spot zoning, which I've long complained about. So That's pretty much it. I hope you will take additional time to consider the comprehensive plan. I appreciate the fact that Mr. Chestnut's going to do a workshop. That's just another example of the fact that holding public workshops with a commissioner present in the community is not that hard, and it's something that should not have been rejected by the city attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mounts.
That was our last speaker, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Oh, I beg your pardon. We had another one sign up, Peggy Carr. Apologies.
I will be very brief, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you. I'm so grateful for your comments today and your careful consideration about a revision to the timeline. And also, it seems a consensus about trying to simplify the document. But the one question that I'd like to pose is, could we ask staff when we might have a revised draft for us to take a look at? Because I think there has been so much cleanup recommended already, and it would be helpful to know when the public could get a revision, and then we could use that as a basis to move forward. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
That was our last speaker.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I
Yes,
ask one
ma'am.
more thing? Another 5 seconds. I also want to commend the staff. I think they've done an extraordinary job in the last 30 days, and just hats off to them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Book.
Yeah, I agree with the last comment made by Dr. Carr about staff really have pushed forward to get information out in every way possible and multimedia. Mr. Manager, were you looking, I'm just looking at a recommendation as provide guidance, and I think you've heard some guidance. Was a motion necessary for today? Are you comfortable with what you've heard, or what are you looking for beyond the discussion we just had? Because I know we're up against a kind of a timeline here for today, not for the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, unless staff feels that way, I don't think we need a motion. I think if that's the general consensus, we'll move forward accordingly.
Well, the community engagement portion and getting the word out is much appreciated. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll look to get a revised timeline back, a recommendation for a revised timeline back from staff.
Yeah, we will, and we'll identify when we'll bring the letter forward, because that does have to get approved by the commission, prior to transmittal. So we'll identify that.
Let's go ahead and do that
date.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. It is important that we get this right. Commissioner Willits noted that I recently went down the rabbit hole with a Bieber report and posted on social media yesterday. It really struck me that over the last 5 years, almost 6 years now, but between April of 2020 and April of 2025, the city of Gainesville increased by more than 10,000 people. Now that is more than, and this is not meant in any way to disparage any other community, but that is an increase of more people that actually live in Newberry, which is a thriving community. But that's kind of the scale that we're working with, and that's not going to slow down. It's going to continue. I would submit to you that we probably have added a couple of thousand more people since that report date. So we have to keep an eye on how this works. What do we want the community to look like? Because if we're not specific and intentional about talking about what we want the community to be, it will just happen anyway. And it will get more expensive if we don't allow for where we want things to be built, because I'll promise you, there were not wasn't enough new construction over that 5-year period to equal out the folks who moved here. That means supply and demand is not our friend at this point. Those of us who own a home and have owned a home for a while, we're fine there from that perspective. But people who are moving here and who are looking to buy or rent a home are behind the 8 ball. And we start getting a handle on that by being very intentional about how we do things like the comprehensive plan and land development code updates and all that sort of thing. We have to keep that in mind. We're going to continue to grow at what feels like a very rapid pace. Now, we still grow slower than the rest of Florida does, and then our neighboring communities do. But again, 10,000 people came here in a 5-year period. So that is not going to slow down anytime soon, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. And I will talk about it quite a lot over the next months and years. I will also continue to talk about economic development, as you heard me talk about earlier today, because I think that's a key component of making space and jobs for those folks, those 10,000 people, those 2,000 people a year who are moving here. That we've got to keep that in mind. We don't talk enough about economic development in this room, and that is something I'm intent on changing. So that's a lot. Madam Clerk, anything else on this one?
Not on this item.
All right.
And we have member comment.
Very good. One thing I wanted to add, as we think about these things, I've had a lot of folks ask me about something that the plan board asked staff to bring forward at more than once, and I think it is time we had a discussion about it. There is a reason that the north side of University Avenue between 6th Street and 13th Street has not seen investment. While we've seen investment, huge investment on the south side, we've seen the only investment we've really seen on the north side is a liquor store. And that's not necessarily what we want there, I don't think. That we haven't had the big discussion about it, but we need to have some discussion about what might make investment happen there when there's another boom possibility, and even before then potentially. And I think that is a question of considering the historic buffer, not the historic zone itself, but the historic buffer north of University Avenue. I would like us to get some recommendations from staff on that, and the way to do that is by us having that conversation here briefly. So is anybody else interested in having that come forward from staff? Commissioner Eastman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I do. Well, I think particularly on storefront streets or on major thoroughfares like University Avenue, that if there's an underlying zoning there, I think it makes a lot of sense for that underlying zoning to prevail over the specific buffers. I mean, I think you can just look at it and you can see the underinvestment that's there, and you can. And it's one of those quiet rules that quietly has a huge amount of impact on that corridor. And so I think it's well worth having that conversation. I don't know if we would want to make a motion to have staff review it, or if we.
Mr. Manager, do you need a motion to?
If that's the direction, yeah, I think so. I think this is something that the plan board may also be discussing as well. But if that's the direction from the commission, it would be good to have that on the record.
Yeah, I would like staff to review the buffer zones along, I guess, University Heights North and South, and come back with recommendations to support redevelopment of that corridor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Book.
It's a good motion. There's been some discussion. I know Commissioner Duncan Walker also had brought this up, but in a different area, related really to East Gainesville. I think it was more east of Waldo Road, and some of the couple of the neighborhoods, especially in the southeast, had brought up the same thing, that a proliferation of a certain type of business in a particular area. So I know that she's very interested in that too. I don't know if that's something you'd like to add to the motion. I support the motion regardless.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. And I think it's comprehensive because you asked for it to be along major corridors.
I think I said, yeah, I made it, I didn't expect you to bring it up. I mentioned University Heights North and South, and the buffer zones there, for those two. It's that's a direct regulation that has a distortioning effect on redevelopment of that particular area. The issue of liquor, tackling the issue of stopping, businesses that are things that you don't necessarily want in your neighborhood within specific areas that's a sticky thing to tackle, and is that's about pushing against market forces in a way that I'm not really sure what tools we have. I'm happy to have staff take a look at it, but it's sort of a different beast. I'm curious if there's cities that have tackled that in some way, because I do think it's well worth having a conversation about.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you guys, I think you all clarified it. I just wanted to make sure, like, one issue was about liquor store density, and we can certainly take a look at that if that's the direction of the commission, and I think that would probably entail looking at some other jurisdictions, and how and working with the city attorney's office to make sure we're staying consistent with state law and all the provisions about economic businesses and whatnot. But and then the other is the height buffer for the historic district, outside of the historic district, within 100 feet of the boundaries and stuff. So, and that's the issue that is at that plan board. But we certainly take a direction on both.
Okay. Very good. All right, so we have motion and second. Is there any public comment on this?
What's the seconder? I apologize.
Just not.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on that? You don't need to fill a form out if you'd like to speak on it. Okay. All right. All right. Seeing no further lights, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioners Engel and Duncan Walker absent. Anyone else? Member comment? Commissioner Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So recently a new coffee shop opened in Southwest 13th, 7 Brew, and I've already given some feedback, at least, on Reddit and neighborhood app next door, and I've seen it. Like, it's a drive-through place on a major strip. I know it's a state highway, but there's already problems with traffic backing up, people trying to get into it, and they designed their site to have a bunch of. I think it's a double drive-through. They would pay 2 drive-throughs in a mobility plan, 2 lanes, and they designed it so that a lot of that is wrapped in the site, which is more common among Starbucks and all those kind of things. But how is it? Is there anything we can do, Mr. Manager or Mr. Attorney, about like, it's great that it is busy and it's exciting, and I just didn't realize so many people would be driving there. Even there are a lot of students who come on, get off a bus, or they walk, or they take a bike. But I don't know. It's just a little feedback that I've seen it. People are starting to talk about it because it's literally backing up in traffic lanes and blocking people who need to take if they're southbound on 13th, they need to take a left onto 16th. But the whole traffic used to be in that turn lane to go to the light, but now they're trying to get into that site. So and this is an issue we experienced with the Starbucks on Northwest 13th. Some other places. Those are the 2 that come to mind most recently. So I don't know can you remind us again what we can and can't control on that? Or Mr. Edelton's here as well, so he knows some.
And I know Mr. Singleton's also been involved in a lot of this as well. Well, I could say with respect to the Starbucks on 13th Street, what we've done to address some of the stacking concerns is, by code that is a prohibited activity. You can't have a drive-through that creates those stacking issues. And so how we've addressed that is through a combination of code enforcement and GPD, in terms of it's both an issue that the business has to address through means in case of Starbucks or other similar drive-throughs. That may mean adding additional staff to come out and take orders, or direct traffic to prevent people from stacking onto the adjacent roadways. That stacking is also illegal from a traffic perspective, and that may include some additional enforcement from GPD. I think in the case of the Starbucks, I believe GPD had several discussions with management to implement some changes to improve that situation. I don't know if I drove by the 7 Brew recently and was a little bit out of the development stuff these days, so I was a little bit surprised to see it. But we can certainly, I'm not sure if it's already on staff's radar, but we can certainly follow up with a similar approach if we're having the same issues there.
Okay, and it just recently opened, so this may just be, first couple weeks, that it
Right.
dies down and people figure out what time of day they want to go to get their coffee. It's great to see it there, kind of a need for that kind of thing close to the university on that side. So it's nice. Haven't been there yet, but I will eventually. But it's just kind of, I'm starting to observe it, and we'll see how it goes, and whether, if it all just dies down and at a normal speed and it's okay. But similar to the Starbucks, just giving the feedback now, and if it becomes a problem in the future, whatever staff does to handle those kind of things. Thank you.
All right, I will, adjacent to that, I am bewildered by the proliferation of everywhere of drive-through high-end coffee places. But I know that I am not their target market. I fully understand that, so. Yeah. All right, I see no further lights, so thank you all for a very productive afternoon, and we are adjourned.